Be it resolved that the Council of the Township of Greater Madawaska calls to order the April 18th, 2024 regular council meeting at 3 p.m.
Do we have a mover? Councillor Thompson, second by Councillor Popke. All in favor? That is unanimous. So thank you. Please be seated. As we gather in chambers, I would like to acknowledge on behalf of the council and our community that we are meeting on the unceded traditional territory of the Algonquin people. We would like to thank the Algonquin people and express our respect and support for their rich history, and we are extremely grateful for their many and continued displays of friendship. We'd also like to thank all generations of people who have taken care of this land for thousands of years. Thank you, Miigwech. Section 2.1, approval of agenda minutes, additions, deletions. Resolution, please.
That the agenda of the council meeting of April 18th, 2024 be approved as presented.
Thank you. Do we have a mover? Councillor Tripp, second. Sorry, Councillor Beck, you can't second the minutes, so you were not present at that meeting. Thank you. Councillor Popke, thank you. All in favor? That is carried. Sorry, was that the, maybe I had that wrong. It was the 18th that you were not here, or was it the 21st? The 21st. So my apologies, Councillor Beck. It's still passed. So this one, or no, so no, okay. So resolution 72-24, approval of minutes.
Be it resolved that the following minutes are approved by council, March 21st, 2024, regular council.
Thank you. Do we have a mover? Councillor Thompson, second by Councillor Tripp. All in favor? So carried. Accepting minutes, resolution 73-24. Resolution, please.
Be it resolved that the following minutes are accepted by council, February 16th, 2024, Canada Committee, March 6th, 2024, Recreation and Culture Committee.
Thank you. Do we have a mover? Councillor Levesque, second by Councillor Thompson. All in favor? That is carried. Are there any pecuniary or declarations of pecuniary interest or the general nature thereof? There are none seen. Thank you. Delegations and presentations. 5.1, Joint Municipal Community Safety Plan and Wellbeing Plan. Please do the introductions.
That council receive the Joint Municipality Community Safety and Wellbeing Plan as information.
Thank you. Do we have any mover? Councillor Thompson, Councillor Popke to second. All in, oh. Yep, they were receiving. Yes, it's received, yes. All in favor to receive. Oh. Or are we doing the presentation? Oh, there we go.
So we have Patrick Finnegan here today to summarize the process and the community well-being plan, which was So Patrick would have been the one that drafted the plan.
Is it customary to sit or stand?
He didn't sit.
And we'll just get you to turn your mic on too. Just push it so it's green.
It's green.
There we go.
Good afternoon, Mr. Mayor, council, members of the public. It's absolutely an honor and a pleasure to be here, and it's nothing short of a miracle that I am here. You know that this plan has been delayed. Let's just use the word significantly. It's not so much the dog ate my homework, but I had a little battle with melanoma stage 4 cancer for 2.5 years. It almost took my life. And at one point I was told I had 4 months to live, and yet here I am, 20 months cancer-free, treatment-free. So feeling really, really grateful for everything, and in particular to be here. It was a beautiful drive up, and you have a lovely community. So the Community Safety Wellbeing Plan, you've all had a chance to take a look at it. It is 101 pages. I've been teased about that because I told a councillor from Upper Ottawa Valley at one point in time, I said, this isn't going to be one of those 100-page plans. And he complimented me, and he said, thankfully, someone with some common sense finally decided to create a shorter version of the plan. But when I struck out to do that, there were things that I would have had to leave out that would have sold the plan short. So what I decided to do was figure out a way that I could create different levels of engagement for users of the plan, because someone might need all of the information, someone might need just a quick glance, and someone might need, something that you could read in what I call the dentist's office read. It's about 8 pages, and it would take you about 15 minutes, and you would be up to speed. So the plan is 101 pages, but fear not, it is very accessible. It's in a PDF format, which, as everyone here probably knows, is a universal file format that anyone can access. So accessibility is important. You don't need to buy software. If you have access to the internet, you'll be able to read this plan. So I thought that was important. It's also electronically searchable. It's a joint plan that represents 7 different municipalities, essentially the Renfrew OPP detachment boundary. I also created a very similar plan for Upper Ottawa Valley based on that detachment area, and I worked closely with the consultant who created the one for Killaloe. So perhaps one day, you have a big county, everybody knows that, one of the largest, I think, in Canada, unless I'm mistaken. There's a possibility that those plans could be merged into one. But for now, you're represented in this particular plan. So again, the 3 levels of engagement. One was the elevator pitch. That's just a 1-page at a glance with some graphics. What is Community Safety Wellbeing Plan? Why are we doing it? 2, the dentist's office read, 8 pages, would take you maybe 10 minutes. And then there's over 60+ pages in what I call the deep dive. So it's very reader friendly. There's lots of pictures and graphics. This isn't just a plan that contains paragraphs and paragraphs and paragraphs of text. Obviously, things have to be communicated in written format, but I've tried to back those up with as many images and graphics as I possibly could. One section of the plan covers 4 key initiatives that really are providing a lot of community safety well-being to your respective communities. 1 being the situation table, 2 being the Renfrew Area Connection Center, which is now new, 3 being the enhanced response to intimate partner violence, and I'm missing 4 on my page here. I was making notes in the car. Well, there's a 4th one. I can't think of what it is at the moment. Many of the plans that I looked at, and I looked at a lot of them, I read a lot of them, and I glanced at many, many more. And one of the things that I would do is just pull a plan off the internet and start counting how many pages before I can get to where I find out what the priority risk factors are for that community. And the average is around page 40. So I at least endeavored not to do that. You'll find the priority risk factors on page 11. So you don't have to go too far into the plan before, and that's in the dentist office read. And the priority risk factors, there are 6 that have been identified through the lived experience survey. The first 4 are very high: poverty, housing, mental health, drug addiction, and alcohol addiction, followed up by basic needs not being met and impaired driving. These, although they are considered the priority risk factors in the overall plan, they're not reflective of what your community says it's like to live in the greater Madawaska. In fact, your community, so red was, high priority. Yellow was high, blue was, not high, and then green was, almost, not an issue. And just about everything comes up green in Greater Madawaska. So congratulations to you and the folks that live here that make it the safe and healthy community that it is. But I'm sure you'll agree with me that it doesn't mean that there isn't room to improve. There always is. So those are the priorities. The plan is also a philosophy and a methodology. And so you might read the plan and say, hey, this reminds me of Seinfeld. It's a plan to have a plan. And what happened was we got to a point where we were ready to identify specific risk factors and priorities and then begin to implement things. So then that's when you create the implementation teams and develop new strategies. And the advisory committee said, time out, please assure us that we're not going to start anything new until we know exactly what we have now. And so one of the next steps is to take a full inventory of everything that's available within the county itself, and put together a document that will be published alongside of the plan on the internet that will also be accessible and searchable. I call this the lighthouse document. So the idea is, what is it that we're doing now? So I'm working on that now, and I hope to get it to a certain point in the very, very near future and then have someone take that over for me. And so what would happen is if you were going to address something, an issue that, for instance, mental health resources for children in a particular area to address a particular problem, you'd be able to go to this document and say, what do we have now that addresses that? So that we're not, tripping over each other, creating redundancy of human effort, economic resources, precious tax dollars, et cetera. So the philosophy and methodology are really important because this type of planning has to be approached with a certain mindset and what I also call a heart set. You have to sort of ready yourself for this type of work. It's risk focused, so that doesn't mean that we're putting all of our resources and time and energy in just one area, but the idea behind this is you start where the biggest problem is in the red zone, which is a crisis. And we want to move upstream from crisis so that eventually we're reducing our 911 calls. They're the most expensive services for any municipality. I'm sure you're well familiar with your policing bill and all of the other emergency service bills that go along with that. The plan needs to be inclusive, high value is placed on lived experience, and it has to be community focused. So I like the analogy of a building plan. If you had ever endeavored to build something important and substantial, and if you tried to do that without a plan, you likely wouldn't end up with much of a structure at the end of the day. So we're well positioned now to start moving into the next steps, which, as I said, are the Lighthouse document. I've completed situation table awareness training, which I'm about to start sharing with the county, both in Upper Ottawa Valley and here in Renfrew area. And so what that will do is start to create a much greater awareness of the situation table, how it works. If I surveyed people in the room right now and said, do you know what our situation table is? Do you know what it does? Do you know how to access it? And the answer would probably be, I'll get back to you on that. So we need to improve that because that absolutely is one of your best upstream crisis intervention strategies that's already up and working. When all of that's done, we're going to go through an exercise called Keep, Drop, Create. So we look at everything that's in place. I stole this from Shelley Jameson when she was Secretary of Cabinet. What are we doing that we should keep doing? What are we doing that we need to stop doing? And what aren't we doing that we need to create? And when we then start to create, that's when we form implementation teams to develop a strategy to mitigate risk in a particular area. It might be an initiative that addresses a problem within the entire county. Could be an initiative that addresses simply a problem here in Greater Madawaska. The advisory committee also needs to be revamped, updated, and we're going to be doing some recruiting there because time has passed, nothing stays the same. People have moved on, changed roles, changed communities, etc. So that's on the list going forward as well. So I've kept that very, very high level, and I wanted to save a little bit of time. I don't know if I have any time, but I want to save time for questions if there were any.
Thank you very much, and thank you for putting this together and coming here today. So I'll open it up to council. Any questions from council? Councillor Thompson. Excuse me.
Thank you. It's a lot to sum up in just a few words. So I've been saying we should be on a committee somewhere, Greater Madawaska, for years. So just to see that we now have a dialogue with not just policing service, but the whole wellness, the whole emergency is great. I am a little concerned about the survey. I believe it was September 22 of 2022 that the survey was done. We were all running for council at that time, and I don't remember that survey at all. And what concerns me is that it's a lived experience survey, so you want to hear from people who are in or have experienced or know somebody with situations that might need help. And the results were all, rainbows and butterflies. It was all low for this. Was there a good response rate? I know you probably don't have it off the cuff. That's the first thing. And the second thing, all the conclusions were all the 7 municipalities feel this is important, therefore we should do something as this county, this part of the county. Does that mean we'll get less consideration for services?
No.
Here? So that's my
Yeah,
question.
so excellent question, and I'm quite happy to answer that. So yes, you're correct. It was rainbows and unicorns for Greater Madawaska. You did have the lowest response rate. I don't know why that might be, but we could argue that it wasn't necessarily representative. I didn't worry too much about it for 2 reasons. Number one, those results are the same. I could have predicted them and won a big prize. They're the same in every community that's gone through this in the last 3 years. They're the same across the province. They're the same across this country. Those are the sort of risk factors that are plaguing Canada and frankly North America. So they're highly predictable. Like mental health being number one. That should come as not as a shock to very many people. So I wasn't too concerned about that. Number two, it would be a simple thing to rerun the lived experience survey within your community if you wanted to try and drive it harder and see if you could get a better response rate and see how that changed. This is a living document, so it's not a one and done. So now we've sort of got a philosophy, a methodology, and we're ready to get going. So every year the idea is the plan will just stay unchanged, and we'll file an update or an addendum to it, if you will, to say these are the new initiatives that were created. And in our email correspondence, Mr. Mayor asked me about performance measures and goals and objectives, and those all need to be there, absolutely. So when we decide, okay, here's a new initiative that we're going to undertake, as well with the Lighthouse document, every single program or service that's highlighted in the Lighthouse document will also have some sort of a key metrics associated to it, so that we can look at this and go, okay, well, we're doing this, but is it working? We're spending this much money, but are we getting a result? Are we on target? Are we hitting the mark? So we can recirculate that. I equate this to, if you decided you wanted to get really fit, I could survey the room and you'd say, okay, well, here's what you got to do. You got to watch what you eat. You got to get enough sleep. You got to drink a lot of water. You got to get exercise. Maybe go to the gym. And if you did all those things and got into your optimal fitness level, and then I said, well, can you stop now? The answer would be, well, maybe for a few weeks, but anybody who's ever done that knows that you lose it much faster than you've gained it. So this isn't something that we can just do quickly and be done with. This has to become a way of life. So there's time. In other words, there's from now till eternity to continue to allow the plan to evolve. So if you wanted to rerun the survey to get a better perspective for this council, I could facilitate that. Certainly wouldn't cost you anything.
Supplemental?
And where do people find this document?
So the plan will be on each municipality's website. So this is mandated by the ministry. So Ministry of the Solicitor General. And what's happening is, as soon as your council passes a resolution to adopt the plan, which I believe you did right here today, if I can get a copy of that resolution, you can send it yourself, but I'm in direct contact with the ministry, some folks that I know there, and they're waiting for me to provide them with a resolution from each of the municipalities, and then a box is ticked, you're compliant, and you're on your own to continue to work with the plan.
Thank you. Councillor Tripp?
Thank you. I want to congratulate you on a piece of excellent work. There's nothing more exciting than opening up our council package of 240 pages of reading material. And the first report out of the gate is 170-ish pages long. That said, I thought it was brilliant the way you opened it up with the elevator and then the dentist and the deep dive. Because what I found is, as I was reading through the one pager, I had questions on the advisory committee, for example, and the document was so light and easy to flow, I could jump into that page in the deep dive and pull the information out I needed. And to that, I was quite impressed with the advisory committee, because this is a report, and in the report and the program, it's reached out to all of the different sectors throughout our 7 municipalities, and the representation on it is good. So the information coming in and flowing out is not just at the political table, it's across all levels of our county. So very well done, very easy to read, and I think it's a strong document and a living document. As Councillor Thompson said, it's important that we stay on top of this, both through the advisory committee and all the people who feed into it, but also to keep coming back with some frequency on just a signal check and to make sure we stay in that green, fuzzy, happy unicorn place. But thank you for the work. Well done.
Thank you, Councillor. Mark Twain said I could live for a week on a good compliment, so I'll take that one with me.
Thank you. Any other questions, concerns, discussion items from council? No, I would, oh, sorry, RCAO, go ahead. Oh, okay. I'd just like to say thank you, because public safety, the well-being, inclusion, and diversity is built into the fabric of this document. And I think it's extremely important that those are addressed, that for not just our municipality, but all municipalities in all areas of Ontario and Canada. And I thank you for making sure that they're pillars within those, within this document.
Well, I got that sense from
appreciated.
your comments that you provided. You didn't just throw something together, you thought it out. And I think the word you used was the bedrock of the community, and you're absolutely right. And it's not just about focusing on one particular area. And we want businesses to grow. We want people that are thriving to thrive even more, and people that are struggling to have a notion that they will one day thrive.
And thank you for that.
All right, thank you.
Our CAO.
I'll just, before we vote on it, I'll just adjust the resolution to adopt versus receive. That council adopt the joint municipality community safety and well-being plan.
All in favor? That is unanimous, so carried. Thank you. Thank you. Drive safe.
Thanks.
Okay. We'll now move on to 5.2, 2023 financial statement, Welsh LLP, Chartered Financial Accountants. Resolution, please.
The council approves the 2023 financial statements prepared by Welch LLP as presented.
Thank you. Do we have a mover? Councillor Popke, seconder. Councillor Thompson. And the background? Jennifer, is this? Okay.
I believe we have Umar joining us today to do a presentation.
Good afternoon, everybody. Mr. Mayor, council members, can you hear me okay?
We can.
Thank you. I just thought I would go over the audit status and just provide you a brief overview, because I know there's a number of materials to go through today. So the audit status is that we are near completion of the audit. At this point, there are a few things outstanding which are standard. And so one of those is council's approval of the financial statements. The audit result is that it is a clean or unqualified opinion on the financial statements. What that means is us as independent auditors believe that the financial statements are fairly presented in all material respects. One thing we like to outline is that we are independent as auditors. So management prepares the statements and keeps the records, books and records of the township. And we come in as auditors and independently evaluate those judgments and the transactions that are recorded. And we believe these are all fairly presented. With respect to any differences we might have that during the course of the audit we might find, we would propose those differences to management, and they have accepted all of those differences. So they've been reflected in the financial accounts. And just as a point of, in addition to the independence, these financial statements are prepared in accordance with public sector accounting standards. So these aren't our standards as auditors. These aren't your standards as a township or best practices as a township. So the standards are outside of both our control. And so they've been prepared in accordance. There's a number of changes that have happened, and Welch did go through all those changes to ensure compliance, and management did an excellent job of adopting those new standards. And I think the final thing to highlight is, as independent auditors, it's our professional obligation to report to you any sort of unusual items or things that might be of interest to you, even if it doesn't impact the fairness of the financial statements. And at this moment, we do not have any such item to report to you. With that in mind, I will throw it back to you, Mr. Mayor, for any questions or comments regarding the financial statement package.
Thank you. Jennifer, do you have any comments, or pretty well summed it up?
I'm all summed up.
Okay.
You received your package, and it's been a pleasure working with Welsh, and
Thank you.
I'm here for any questions as well.
Thank you. Any questions, comments, discussion items from council? No? Okay.
Just give.
Very good. All right, as there's none seen, anything further CAO on that? Okay. Pardon me? Okay. All in favor? 2. That is unanimous, so carried. Thank you very much for your time, sir. We now move on to section 5.3. Kristen Wagner and Sarah Wales, Calabogie, pardon me? Sandra. My apologies. Sandra Wales from Calabogie Market Organizing Committee, waiving of lowering of rental and insurance fees. Thank you. Welcome.
Hello, Mr. Mayor, councilors, members of the public. Thank you for having me, and Sandra as well. I am here today as part of the organizing committee, as you know, seeking to, not necessarily, it would be preferable to have the fees waived. However, even lowering them would be beneficial. So this would be the 5th year that the Calabogie market has run. It started in 2018. We had 2 years of COVID where everything was shut down, and it came back in 2022. This will be the first year that I'm actually part of the organizing committee. I have been a vendor at it since its inception. Up until last year, the fees have been waived for the rental of the community center for the last 4 seasons of the market. The first 3 seasons of the market, it was a free market for all vendors. I think the only condition was that any local vendor had to be approved or had to automatically be allowed to be a vendor at the market. Last year, the organizers took a different approach. They chose to run it as a farmer's market. Council waived the fees for the community center. However, there was a vendor fee, and sponsorships from local businesses collected. So at the end of the day, the market committee last year was profiting from the market. And without getting into semantics of that, that model did not work. For anyone who came out, there are not enough businesses in the area classified as farmers for there to be a big enough attendance at the market, unfortunately. So it was a bit of a painful year. A lot was learned. And this year we are trying to bring it back to what it has been in the past. So the first couple of years of the market, it was kind of a place that the community all came out to on Saturday mornings, whether they were shopping or not. even just coming out for a coffee. Attendance was fantastic. And that's what we are looking to bring it back to this year. We are trying to attract vendors from as many different areas as possible. But with the shadows of last year, it's a little difficult. We are finding that not a lot of vendors want to commit to a full season, if at all. I think there are some vendors who do not want to return. But we're finding it challenging getting people to commit. We've also sort of been at a standstill with advertising because we are not looking to profit from the market as an organizational committee. We are just looking to have it run. So we don't want to be asking vendors to be paying exorbitant fees to be part of this market. We would like to keep the costs as low as possible. Because I think that is the only way that we are going to attract vendors to want to come out. And if we want the community to come out every week, we need more vendors. That is the one thing that I heard last year, time and time again. It's not worth my time to come out. There's not enough people, there's not enough vendors here for me to shop, which is disappointing to hear as a local business, but I understand because I questioned myself weekly going there as well. So yeah, we're really trying to rebuild this year. We want to get a foundation of vendors who really want to commit themselves to Calabogie. And had we known, so we only found out about a month ago, I think it was March 22nd, that we met with Renee and Jenna, that we would be responsible for putting together a proposal to come to council, because the past 4 years, once the rental agreement was signed, staff sort of took it upon themselves to bring it to council. So this is the first time that organizers have had to actually come and make this request, and it's tough to do. I understand that policies do have to change. I worked for the government for many years. I totally get that. But we are so close to wanting to start the season, and it's tough to come up with a vendor fee to make sure that we can afford to pay the rental and the insurance, maybe have some money to market. Ideally, we would love it to be a low cost market to attract everyone, but we will see the outcome and we will make it work as best we can. Sandra knows more about the number of vendors, but I think if I did the math correctly, in order to cover the weekly rental fee and insurance, we would need to ensure that we have at minimum 20 vendors there every week just to cover it. And that is charging $150 for the season for a full-time vendor and $10 for those who want to come out, just pick and choose which weeks they want to come out. So that sort of leaves us in a spot where we don't know where people want to commit. We can't be certain that we're going to have that many vendors. We would love to have it. I ran a Christmas market. I had 60 to 70 vendors come out, so I know that it is possible, but people are very skeptical of coming back, unfortunately. And that is not to say that in years to come, if we are able to make this market back into what it once was, we would be happy to pay the full cost, but we're at a point, we're a month and a half away from starting. We have very little commitment from people. I want to be advertising, but without knowing what it's gonna cost, I don't want to make extra money. Like if we say $150 and we have all this extra money left over, I don't want that. That doesn't seem right. But yeah, that is what it is. I don't think I have much else to say. I could ramble on about this forever, but yeah.
No, we have a time limit.
I know. You can cut me off at any point. That's fine. But yeah, we're just looking to build this into a place that people want to come and people want to spend their time and people enjoy it. So yeah.
Thank you. I'll now ask any questions, comments, discussion items from council. Councillor Tripp.
Thank you. I'm not sure if this is to the floor at the table here or to you, but what is the fee structure for the use of the facility?
The facility fee for rental would be $150 per week for them. And then the request currently includes the insurance, and then the insurance are non-waivable or requirement.
And I think based on the discussions we've had, it would be about $70 a week for insurance, so 200 and some dollars a week.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions, comments, discussion items from council? Councillor Thompson.
I know you're doing a tough thing. We had a farmer's market in Madawaska for about 7 years, and it had those same issues. You know, the farmers were thinking it should all be farm, and we don't want too many crafts. And then there were the government regulations that you have to have a certain percentage of farm too. So I really do understand that as well. We all understand the value that a farmer's market brings to the community if you can get it rolling. I don't think we're going to be making a decision here now, right? Is
Well,
that,
we
could
Yep.
make it, okay. Then anything we can do to help is my thought on it.
Councillor Tripp.
Thank you. And just to follow up to the numbers and the money, I followed the market for the last 4 years, the 3 that were really quite successful leading into COVID, and the energy and the hype and the community spirit that was there was real. Last year, there was a pivot in the design to make it a farmer's market, which really limited the number of community tables that could be there that weren't farmers. So we were looking to draw people, bring them into a room and only offer them, but have one product for sale, products from a farm. We're a small community. We know a lot of people, and we're friends with a lot of people in the community. And a number of the vendors that I knew that were friends that were making tea cozies and soaps and little things enjoyed it. It wasn't a moneymaker for them. It was an opportunity to get out into the community. And if you sold a bit of wares, terrific. But they couldn't handle the fee that was required under the old model. So I understand the anxiety. It's a huge pivot to come back and grow back to what we had from where we were at the end of last year. So I commend you for that. I think the market is a strong but early driver for economic development, which is stuff that I think we're going to be looking at in the future, because it is bringing our businesses together, not just under the farming brand, but the small shops, as well as the big shops that want to come in. And we saw that energy, and we saw what was possible at Taste of the Valley and the draw. And that was the buzz and the hype that we had historically. So I think it's going to take work, and it may not happen this year, so don't be discouraged. I mean, it may not happen in terms of our decision tonight. The growth to where you want it to be may take a year and a half.
Absolutely.
So do not be discouraged if this year is still a hard struggle. Coming out of the gate is hard. But I certainly see the value of this in our community, and I think it's something we really need to focus on, not just at this table, but as a community of a whole. We need, as individuals and residents, to get out and support it and to have fun. And if you don't need to buy meat or vegetables, go and have a coffee. And then to get the vendors in the community back to create that energy. But it's an important part of who we are as a community. So thanks for the courage, big pivot to turn it around.
It is, yeah.
Thank you. Any other questions? Councillor Levesque.
Thanks, Kristen. That's a great report, and I appreciate all the work you and everybody else doing behind the scenes. More of a question, I guess, to our CAO is we currently don't have any no consistent means to either turn down or approve anything that's really on an ad hoc basis. Is that correct?
Yeah, so you're referring to more of a policy around this?
Correct.
So yeah, we currently don't have one.
And are we planning to have a policy?
Yes, so I've been working on a draft policy. I mean, we have 2 requests at council tonight. Most municipalities would have a waiving policy. It didn't seem fair to put it on the same night as some of these requests are coming through. But yes, there's a policy with criteria coming forward.
Okay, thank you. And I guess the other piece to that is, because of the use of the facility, there's going to be cleanup and that kind of thing. Is that the market to do that, or how is that going to work?
Combination, so when we have a rental, the person that rents it is responsible for cleaning it up, but that still requires staff to go in and do the cleaning from the.
Okay, so that really doesn't change in this case.
That is correct.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions, comments, discussion items from council? No? Oh, Councillor Thompson.
I'm just wondering about the need for insurance. If they're part of the township and not a renter, do they still need insurance? Are they not covered under the insurance for the facility?
We highly recommend to have an insurance for external parties coming in. It's actually bought through the township as a facility usage insurance. And what it does is it safeguards the township insurance should something happen. And so the insurance, I think the range for the whole season was in the, was it $400 or $500? But yes, it's highly recommended. And then, sorry for another, just to add to that, is this is the insurance to buy from the township through our insurer. They have the option to provide proof of insurance through their own insurance, and then, or purchase otherwise also.
Thank you. Any other questions, comments from council? No. A couple of questions I have. Over the last 4 years, do we know what percentage of the vendors were Greater Madawaska residents?
That I couldn't tell you. Especially the first 3 years, it was well attended. I would say there's easily 30 to 40 vendors weekly those first 3 years, and I was nowhere near part of it, but I would say a large majority were from Greater Madawaska. Last year, I don't know. Last year, I would say at least half were Greater Madawaska, and a lot of them were coming from outside of Greater Madawaska.
Thank you. And then now the half you say maybe from outside, any idea, were they from Renfrew County?
The majority
or
were from
other
Renfrew
counties?
County. There are a couple from the Ottawa area that were coming in occasionally, but if not here, Renfrew County or Lanark.
Okay. And you also mentioned that last year you had sponsorship. And what was that sponsorship money used for? Was it for the, because you weren't paying rental fee on the community centers per se, so I'm just trying to get at what was the sponsorship money for?
That's a very good question. I was not part of the organizing committee last year, so I can only speak to what I know of. But what I do know is that I don't know how many vendors paid fully, but there was a $150 vendor fee. There was a significant amount of money given as sponsorships. I believe the township even provided funds as well. I think, and the insurance was purchased through Farmers Markets Ontario, and that was under $1,000. It was like $840. I want to say thousands were put towards marketing. And then I do believe there is some left over in an account held by the previous organizer. I can't really speak much more to that.
Okay. And that account that's held by the previous organizer, is that being transitioned to this organization? Or is it being held in?
I think so, yes. I think in initial conversations, we were looking at maybe the township holding the funds and collecting the funds. But I believe that is the plan, to have it transferred over.
Okay.
I don't want to say, I don't really agree with what happened last year, so that's as much
I'm
as
just trying to get it clear in all our
Yeah.
heads too, but
Absolutely.
yeah, so we have the use of the facilities, and that includes the hydro, the Wi-Fi, the washrooms that are there. Okay. Anything else from council or at this time? Oh, the other question I had is at the very first start of your proposal, you mentioned that lowering the fees. Have you created a business plan on, or an idea of what the lower fee you would be shooting for?
No, because at this point, we just, I don't know, I only became really part of the organizing committee maybe end of February, and some meetings had happened before then, so I'm not really aware of what was discussed before, but I believe in talking with Sandra that it wasn't really brought up until March 22nd about putting in the proposal, and it kind of caught us off guard because it had been waived the previous 4 years. So we don't really want to be charging $150 a vendor. That's unheard of in the area. I think the most expensive market I'm a part of is $100, and that's with the insurance included type thing. But just anything, like we just want to be able to attract vendors, and if we could lower the fees. However, obviously, like I would have to discuss it with the rest of the committee, but there is the money left over from last year that could potentially go towards that. I don't know, but we're just looking to get the ball rolling because we're closing in on the beginning of the season.
Okay. Councillor Thompson?
So you said the fees were waived by the township for the last 4 years? What's changed? Was it an automatic thing, or did you approach council every time? And
So again, I have only organized the 2 Christmas markets. I was not part of the regular summer markets, but even for the other 2, when I signed the form and I submitted it, I really never heard anything back until 2 days before when they were giving me the code for anything. So I have been under the impression that staff who dealt with signing of that brought it to council themselves. So this is a first for the organizing committee having to.
Thank you, and I think our CEO
So
Renee
in the
has some
past, what we
clarity.
would do is, as the staff would bring in as a recommendation as they requested it through. What we're trying to do at this point without a policy is not, is with more requests coming through, is it's always been approved by council. It was just brought in a different way. The applicant would not present their case on why it should be waived, and we were not approving it. In the past, the council approved waiving of the fee, and the conditions were that insurance was provided and that they would not charge a fee to operate. So similar to last year, council approved based on no fee being charged. There was a vendor fee being charged, and this is why there's money accumulating. So I feel like at this point, it's ideal that when we have 2 people here, that the requests come in this format until we build a policy around this.
Thank you. Any other further comments? I see Councillor Tripp, your hand on the mic. Nope, okay. Just resting. All right, thank you. And I've just got to go back to my notes. Do we have a resolution? Yeah.
And then that's the thing is, so similar to the request that you would have received recently for a community grant, this is similar, kind of aligns with it, where council would decide on if you'd like to proceed or if you'd like to do a partial fee waiving, or, I mean, this one's a bit more time sensitive to wait for a policy to be developed with criteria. So it is up to council to discuss and decide how do you like to proceed.
Thank you. Councillor Tripp. Councillor Tripp? Or Councillor, okay, don't fight, you two.
Okay.
are we waiting for a motion? If we are, then
So,
what are our options? Like, how do we?
So we can, number one, it would not be beneficial or timely in this manner that we could ask, direct staff to present a policy in regarding the waiving of fees. In this matter specifically, it wouldn't be timely. The other is the council could approve the waiving of fees. And the third would be council could approve the lowering of fees. And I guess that would be directing staff to come up with a lower fee schedule. Renee, would that be correct on that?
Ideally, you would choose how much you're lowering the fee, or you would direct staff to work with the committee to lower a fee that would work for both parties.
Councillor Tripp?
With that, I'd like to suggest a motion for the table that we waive the fees for this year in their entirety, recognizing that this is a pivoting moment and a year to get back on the feet and get the energy going. Recognize that you mentioned consideration for year 2 to revisit, that if you are strong and we're finding it's a good business space, but that the condition would be that we would not charge or have a very minimal charge for people to come and attend, for vendors to attend. Because I don't think it's correct that we're charging $150 for a vendor and waiving the fee. I think the fee needs to be significantly less. I would prefer to see no fee and we waive all the fees. So I guess the motion is that we waive the fee for this year to revisit for future years, and that the condition is that, would you be okay with no fee for vendors? And that there is no fee for vendors. Vendors would attend free. That would give the incentive for people to attend the market.
So maybe I can summarize by that and say that council approved the request made by the Calabogie Market Organizing Committee for this waiving of rental fees for the Calabogie Market Hall rink for the summer of 2024. We cannot waive insurance.
No. But isn't that with a provision that they don't charge their their vendors?
Yes, we can add that. Do you want me to read it again, Robin? Or Jeff, Councillor Levesque?
I'd just like to add one more piece, and sorry, Kristen, but I think this is, as Rob pointed out, it's a pivotal moment. So it would be nice to see what happened at the end of the summer. So having some sort of a summary report on how things went and what the plan is for the following year. Because as Councillor Tripp mentioned, if we're going to be looking at this again next year, does it change, or is it the same for next year that you would request?
Yeah,
right?
no,
So I think it would be a
absolutely.
good idea to come back at some point as a delegation to share what happened and how did it go and what would be different for next year, if anything. Yeah.
No fee to vendors and.
One more. Some sort of signage for the Township of Greater Madawaska that we've contributed or something. Can't we do that? Are you shaking your head?
It's hard to put that in a motion.
Okay.
Because I think advertising is something you need to address on a separate venue, and there's money left over in the account. I think the report we had to council was approximately $1,000 and stuff over. So that may be accessible for marketing, and you have the commitment of the business community historically. So I think signage is something that they would be responsible for. I think we should not direct it, or make that fiscal.
Part link to it. Okay, thank you.
Okay, so, or you're writing out too? Okay. Let me see what I have written out here then. The council approved the request made by the Calabogie Market Organizing Committee for the waiving of rental fees for the Calabogie Community Hall rink for the 2024 summer market, and further that no fees be charged to vendors, and further that they shall report back to council with a year-end summary or report. Okay, I'll need somebody to move, a seconder. I've moved that motion, so seconder, Councillor Popke. All in favor? That is unanimous, so carried. Thank you.
Thank
And
you.
Robin, I'll try and clean up my notes to get it proper for you. And where am I? We'll now move on to section 5.4. Wally Zielinski, am I pronouncing that correctly, sir? Zielinski, my apologies. Sasquatch Innovations Fishing Derby. Invitational. I'm having problems today. Okay. Just need you. You can just introduce yourself too.
Okay, my name is Wally Zielinski. I've lived in the area for the last 14 years, just 5 minutes down the road on the Madawaska River. And for the last 10 years, I've been running a nonprofit fishing tournament / golf shot tournament at my house every August. It got to the point that I had to ask neighbors for the use of their waterfront because it's a unique tournament. I have 3 different divisions in this tournament. Shoreline fishermen, it used to be called father and son, which has been changed to guardian. Because as of last year, we started inviting the guys' girlfriends, wives, and daughters, where it used to be just a boys' event. This year, it's going to be a family event because I've already, what's the word I'm looking for? I've already got the date set for August 10th at Calabogie Lake at the Barnett Cottage. And the reason I'm here is to ask you to waive that fee. I think it's $600 a day. I don't want it for overnight. I just want it for the day. Like I said, we have 3 different divisions. The one I'm working on primarily, the one I want to succeed the most is the Guardian division. I'm stepping down from fishing in the top division this year. I want to adopt a kid, boy or girl, for that day, 8 to 15 years old, and kind of tutor them till they're 16, and then we're going to jump into the top division. Have you got any questions?
Councillor Thompson?
Thank you. There's a Calabogie Fish and Game Club, right? Is that active right now?
I don't know.
Does anyone?
I know I've been, oh, I'm sorry.
Councillor Popke?
No, the, excuse me, the Calabogie Fish and Game Club's been disbanded for a couple of years now.
Oh, okay.
Yes, I remember they came to me and asked me to run it.
Okay.
And that was about 3 or 4 years ago.
Right. So I know that the work the Fish and Game Clubs generally do is, you know, it promotes people coming here and fishing and
Yes.
whatnot. Is Barnett Cottage the only place you can rent? Because that's a fairly expensive place.
I need the space because we've outgrown our 5 waterfronts. My yard and my 4 neighbors gave up all their waterfront for that day for the shore fishermen division, so that they could have the whole length of the river in front of the 5 houses. Now, I know we have a big waterfront over here on Calabogie Lake, and I know if we moved it there, well, I am gonna move it there. I'm just asking if you'll waive the fee for the day. And my friends have always said to me, how do you get all these prizes, and how do you feed everybody free all day? Well, I've knocked on 1,000 doors, and people are donating like crazy. Not big stuff, but enough that it adds up and adds up, that everyone who comes eats free, drinks free, not alcohol, soft drinks, all day long, unlimited. You go up and you fill up your belly all day long if you want. This year, I'm telling the guys, invite your wives, bring the children that are too young to compete in the Guardian division, under 7, bring them. All they gotta do is bring a chair. Because it's a free picnic all day long, while hubby, boyfriend, or girlfriend is out fishing. And they can enjoy the day. And then every kid entered in the Guardian division is getting a brand new rod and reel, right off the hop, without doing anything. You enter a kid in the Guardian division, boom, you get a brand new rod and reel.
Thank you. Any other questions from council? Councillor Popke?
So what's the rough number of people you have on the onshore fishing division?
Last year, we had, I think, about 35 in that division.
Okay, so if you have this at Burnett's Cottage, are they all gonna be fishing sort of on that point between the boat launch and Burnett's Cottage?
Along the shoreline as far as we can go until we run into someone else's property.
Okay, because that was my concern is, people just walking down till they're on somebody else's waterfront.
Oh, no, no,
There,
no,
so-
we draw a line in the sand. This is, we put the barriers up, the orange cones. This is how far you go this way and this is how far you go that
Okay.
way.
Thank you. Any other questions? Councillor Levesque?
So, Mr. Zelinski and I have communicated back and forth on this, and he explained the whole thing. I think there's two things to take note of. The tournament has grown to the point where there's cars all up 508, and it's creating a safety issue. So that's one major reason, in addition to just running out of space. But the other concern that I have is, back to your point, Councillor Popke, is I mean, Saturdays are a very busy day at the park without anybody doing anything.
Right.
So if we add another, I don't know, 50, 60 people and 30 boats and trailers and everything else, like, have we discussed that with Renee and Leonard about what that would look like?
I was thinking of putting a cap on the boats and trailers.
Yeah, like I understand you're here to ask for the waive of the fee and the use of the cottage. I get that part, but it's kind of a bigger picture thing, right? Because
Yeah.
you're shifting from one venue to another. And by doing that, like I know there's other fishing tournaments that are held there from that point as well, but not on shore. They launch boats and they go out on the lake.
Right.
So yours is a little bit unique.
Yes.
So that's the only concern I have is
Yeah.
the shared space of that and what that would look like. With kids with fishing rods, hooks and everything else and people coming in from out of town and it's just, I don't know what that would look like. So it's just a concern, but I don't know how to resolve it.
Right. We never had an issue in the 10 years at my place and my neighbors' yards. We never had one issue. The only thing that worried me, scared me, was last year when it started getting the cars. All the neighbors gave me their parking lots, their driveways, even the people on the other side of the road that didn't have waterfront offered up their parking, but there was still cars that had to be parked along the road. But that's the only issue we've ever had.
So I totally get that, and that was at that venue, and the issue you're highlighting is what we're also respecting.
Yeah.
What I'm saying is by moving the venue to Barnett Park on probably the busiest day of the week, now you're sharing that space with a whole pile of people that are, I mean, if anybody's driven by in a boat or seen that
Yes.
place on a Saturday, it's
There's no.
it's hectic.
I'm sorry.
Yep, no, it's fine, yeah.
There's no issue with us sharing with people, even, excuse me, even if they're not in the tournament. There will be no issue. In fact, if they walk up and they want a free hot dog, hamburger, pop, they're welcome to it. There will be no stoppage of anyone coming in and saying, oh, I don't belong. No, no, no. You're welcome.
Yeah. So I guess in moving forward, if we do resolve this and move forward, then the question might be is what's the outcome from this and how do we measure it for going forward? Because if you come back next year again.
Oh, this is not a
then-
one-off. This
Right.
grows every year. And
Right.
honestly, every year it's going to get bigger. Every year it's going to get better.
Right.
But there is a cap. There has to be a cap at some point.
Yeah. So I would say that, similar to the previous case, if we move forward with this, we would have to get a fulsome report, not just of the economic aspect of it, but also how did the event itself go, not just for you and your patrons, but also the impact on Barnett Park should, if it goes forward. So that's
I don't understand the impact on it.
well, there's two, as I mentioned, right, you're now gonna be sharing this facility with a
Right.
whole bunch of other people
Right.
and activities, right? So then, but there's the secondary piece, which is the economic piece, which is the waiving of the fee and what you get out of the tournament. Because I don't know if we would have the results of your finances as a result of that, and
Like
whether
I say-
we can ask for that or not.
Like I
So-
say, every year somebody comes to me and says, Wally, I've done the math. I'm seeing the people here, I've done the math. where is all these prizes coming from? Like, it's not even close. The money that you get from these competitors doesn't even come close to what you're paying out. On the bottom line, on the final day, to dot the i's and cross the t's, I'm reaching in to $300 out of my pocket, because there's always something at the very end that needs to be done. Okay, here you go, get it done, that's it, that's all. I guess if you want to throw a party, $300 is not a bad amount of money to have to spend.
Councillor Thompson.
Thank you. You're saying all kinds of people are willing to donate prizes and food and
They
all
have
these
been,
things.
yes.
Which shows that there's a good appreciation
Yes.
by the community. What we've done at the Madawaska Hall, and I know various other places, is, at the entrance to put a donation jar to cover the rental. And what I'm thinking is maybe we could say, we'll waive it, but only if you can't make enough through donations to cover it.
If you wanted to
Because
put.
people are really, like, if you put a cost per hot dog, you will get that cost per hot dog. But if people are having a great day and you put a donation jar there, $20 easily, or more.
Yes.
And we've experienced that we get a lot more money by asking for donations, if they know it's going somewhere, like covering the cost. I think that way we can all win, if that's something we can
If you
do.
wanted, like, if the Township of Greater Madawaska wanted to put a bucket out there with the name Greater Madawaska on it and say, would you like to donate?
I hear what you're saying, but I think it'd be far better, that's your bucket, your event, that's what people are here for, that's where their heart is. We put the township, they'll say, I pay my taxes, I'm not gonna put anything in there.
Yeah,
So that's my suggestion.
I understand, and that's I can see that, but I've, for 10 years, done this tournament, and I've never, ever asked anyone for any money other than the registration fee. When they came to my house and my neighbors' yards, when they walked in, everything was paid for, everything.
Thank you. Councillor Tripp.
Thank you. I noticed in the report that you provided to us, or to the CAO, and then as part of our council package, you made reference to also having a golf element to this. You had
Yes,
floating targets where you'd shoot golf balls into the lake.
Yes,
I have a bit of an environmental concern with
well,
that.
we have floating golf balls.
Okay. And a means to collect them?
Yeah, oh yeah, there'll be, I have many volunteers that show up to help with tying lines and undoing lines with all the fishermen on the shoreline, measuring the fish. They're there to help to make sure nothing goes wrong. And the easiest thing to do would be to put a couple people out in kayaks and pick up the floating balls.
Thank you. To
And
supplement.
it's only a 50-yard chip. It's not
Okay.
like we're bombing it with a driver. It's a sand wedge.
So I appreciate that. I think we're maybe falling into the bad terminology, into the weeds on this, but I think the question that is before us is purely to waiving the fee, not getting into the mechanics of the event, but because it's a private event by a private citizen just wanting to have the access to the facility and the waive of the fee.
Yeah, but it's not going to be private anymore when I change the name from invitational to open.
Okay.
Everyone is welcome.
No, I mean, but, okay, fair, good, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Popke.
Just another concern about everybody, especially being open, going to Burnett's cottage there with the boats. Where are these boats coming from? Like, are they from other waters with zebra mussels? Do they have ways of washing their hulls off?
Well,
Like that?
every fisherman is responsible for washing their own boats, and I don't know any that don't do that before they come to a new body of water. I don't know anyone that doesn't scrape and clean their boats. And I would make it, now that you mentioned, I could put it on there that the boats have to be sprayed before they come. I could do that. I've never had to do that because all the fishermen I know are very careful about that.
Thank you. If nobody else has comments, then I'll get into a couple of mine. One is that this is a discussion on the waiving of the fee for the actual Barnett Cottage. He has already expressed that he is having this there on August 10th. And there will be a lot of people there. And that's not part of what we're discussing today, because we have no way to control you having an event there and you're fishing at this time, if I am correct. So we need to bring it back into what we're discussing today is the waiving of the $600 fee for the use of Barnett Cottage. Let me, yep, Councillor Thompson, while I try and come up with a resolution.
Yeah. Just on that, yes, we're talking about waiving the fee, but our decision about whether or not to waive the fee depends a lot on the nature of what it is he's putting there. You know, we can't just say, hey, I want to rent it, can you, you know. So I'm just saying that's why we went into the weeds.
Yep, thank you.
I wouldn't even be interested in renting the cottage other than the fact I serve food. I've always had a barbecue and have somebody in my kitchen making everything and serving everyone. If I go there, I'm being told I have to rent the cottage if I'm serving food. Okay, okay.
So for resolution, we have, well, it's the resolution put before us is to approve or not approve. So if I word it, and then the council can make up their mind on how they wish to vote. If I word it that council approve the requests made by Mr. Wally Zielinski for the waiving of rental fees of Barnett Cottage for his Sasquatch Invitational, changing to open, fishing derby to be held on August 10th, 2024. Do I have a seconder? We can't, are you? You'll make a comment, yeah.
A comment on the motion. We're on the cusp of developing a policy for just these kinds of situations. Is a third option to defer until the policy is in place because the event isn't until August? We have a little bit of wiggle room if staff is coming forward with a policy on these matters of fee waiver and see if it stands the test of the policy. Is a third option just for consideration.
Yep. Okay. Okay, so let's put a motion that council directs staff to present a policy for waiving fees at the next council meeting. Does that provide enough time, CAO?
Yes, I actually have one in draft. We're just, we wanted to make sure everybody had the opportunity to speak before we put the policy in place.
Okay, I wanted to check with you then because I know you guys are very busy and, all right, so let's, motion then be that council directs staff to present a policy for waiving fees at the next council meeting. Now, do I have a seconder? This is the motion. So there was no motion on the table before. So we have a seconder, Councillor Thompson. All in favor? So carried. Thank you, sir.
That's right.
Yep, so once we get this policy, the staff will be in contact with you to further advise.
And could I just ask, when will that be?
Our next council meeting's next month.
Oh, okay, so
Yeah.
would it be settled then? A yes or a no?
I don't have a crystal ball, but I would assume that yes, it would be one way or the other.
Okay, I can wait another month.
Okay.
Okay,
Thank you for your time today.
thank you very much.
We now move on to section 5.1, delegation Kendra Badeau. Is that correct pronunciation? In regards to short-term accommodation owner. 5.5.
Kendra Baidu, but Beto is good enough.
Okay.
Yes. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for having me to speak today. I feel very honored to be doing so. As I said, my name is Kendra. I have a short-term rental in Calabogie here. It's a large capacity space, and I'm concerned about what the bylaw might do to our ability to operate. But I've been talking to other short-term rental operators, and they had some concerns as well. So I thought I would use this as an opportunity to share some of those and have a bit of a conversation. If we go to the next slide. So just wanted to note that this is not a us versus them situation. The operators the owners that I've spoken with are very much in favor of the same things that the bylaw objectives are listed as wanting to accomplish, right? Wanting to, if you go to the next, wanting to safeguard our community's character and the amenities and so on. That's kind of table stakes for short-term rentals, wanting to make sure that we bring visitors here who are wanting to contribute to the community and to the economy here, and maintaining our properties well so that we can meet our insurance requirements and all of those things, but also so we get good reviews. And the level of maintenance for the properties is something that does contribute to the well-being, I think, and the beauty of our township. If we go to the next slide, we'll see that some of the other objectives for the bylaw are focused on how we keep safety, how we make the spaces safe, and how we maintain the spaces. Again, that's the kind of thing that short-term rental operators or owners are incentivized to do. But that's also, fire code and all of those things, those are the kinds of things that everyone needs to be, every property owner needs to be adhering to. And so it's not something that is unique to short-term rental owners. If we go to the next, and then the fifth objective for the bylaw was to put together something that does not increase taxes, something that pays for itself. And as members of the community, of course, the owners, we don't want taxes to go up any more than anyone else does. One concern, though, that I've heard from a number of, especially the smaller operators, but I'm talking about people who rent their space for, a couple weeks a year. They live there, they maybe have, a few $100s coming in for the year, especially when you consider the cost to, the operating costs to do this. At the end of the day, they don't have a lot of money coming in from the rentals, and so some of them are concerned about the cost, the licensing fee, and the administration and the burden of that, and what that might do to their willingness or ability to continue offering that service. And so, but still, these aren't things that we can't work together on to come up with a creative ways to kind of approach things, so that we're not using a one-size-fits-all approach for the bylaw, because the kinds of properties and the kinds of owners are very, very diverse. There's so many different kinds of properties. If you go to the next slide, we've got some of the properties are on 90 acres of land, and concerns about neighbors are not the issue there, right? But then you have other properties that are large capacity spaces that do meet the requirements, in terms of safety and fire and so on. Our space is one of those. If we were to only have room for 12 guests, then the whole way we operate would have to shift, and we may not even be able to stay open because the dollars might not work for us to be able to afford to host people anymore. And there aren't a lot of those large cottages all around the lake, very, very few of them, but the ones that we've got, and in the township, the ones that we've got, we don't want them to close because of something that is, unless they have to, unless it's something that we've come to see as a requirement that we cannot abide as a township. We've got some properties that have a unit above a garage, and then they also have something inside the house. And so the bylaw states that you can, or the draft bylaw states that we can only have one license per premises. So some clarification around what that means and how that would apply to a property like that would be interesting. So on. So just to say that we've got a number of different kinds of properties, and we want to make sure, and different kinds of owners, people who are doing very small operations and people who are trying to do something larger, and how do we make sure the bylaw is accommodating all of that while still respecting the needs of people in the community who don't own short-term rentals and are wanting to have their needs heard as well. If we go to the next slide, we'll see that this is more of what I was saying about some of the challenges that various operators will have with some of the current criteria in the bylaw. For instance, if we have that limit of 2 people per bedroom, I know that the building code, it's something that's come from the building code, trying to make sure that we maintain that level of consistency around how we apply the bylaw. But I was looking, and I saw that CMHC has something in their housing standard where they talk about how it's important that we not use the 2 people per bedroom as a end-all and be-all when we're looking at especially accommodations for others, and how there are a variety of considerations that we would need to look at, or that we could choose to look at if we were willing. I'm just thinking, some of the properties have very, very large bedrooms. There's a room in the space that we run that is extremely large room, and so it has 3 beds in there. It is not a crowded, unsafe space. When we look at what the building code says for the size of that a bedroom should be, our bedroom is much bigger than the size that 3 bedrooms would have to be. So it's just looking at some of the wiggle room that we have, and the objective we're actually trying to meet, and to make sure that all of these things line up, because we don't want to punish 98% of people, or 100% of people really, for something that 2% are what we're worried that they'll do. And if we go to the next slide, we see that I've watched the video from the last meeting, and I saw that there was some concern around properties that are owned by a corporation. And again, we have to remember the diversity of owners. So when I hear corporation, I immediately think big and maybe bad and maybe harmful. But a few folks are very mom and pop, but they've registered their space under a corporation because of insurance reasons, liability tax, whatever personal reason they have for doing that. But it doesn't mean that when you hear corporation, that what is happening is something nefarious. And so we need to look at what's informing kind of our decision making, and making sure that the impact that the decisions have are intentional. We don't want to accidentally make things untenable for someone if that was not the intention if we don't want short-term rentals, that's a different thing. But what I'm hearing so far is that we do see the value that these properties bring to the area, the visitors that come in. And I was listening to, the market. Our friend here, she was talking about wanting to get some support for the market. My guests, I always tell them about the market, and they go and they look and they see, and they actually, that was their feedback. They said there weren't enough vendors this year. But it's just to say that the things that we're working on to build community, the guests at the short-term accommodations are here to support and to bring that life and to help our township thrive. If we go to the next slide, we'll see that actually on the previous slide, I had this little piece about the benefit of larger rentals. And I know that it sounds scary, same as corporations sound scary. Hearing like a large capacity rental sounds like there's going to be some bad behavior. But I guarantee you, the family reunions and the multi-generational families, the local people, my very neighbors who had a need to bring their family together, and they didn't have enough room in their cottage, and so they rented our space and had all generations. And some of those, for that family, because of health conditions, that was the last time they were all together, and they tell me how that was so special to them. And they're not the only ones who are local living here benefiting from having those large capacity spaces. Also, putting on retreats and workshops and things like that, things that do not make us think about harm and awful things happening to our community. Actually, the opposite, really great things happening. So if we go on to the next slide, there's I really am grateful and appreciative of council and the way that you've approached this whole bylaw, having the town council meetings or the town hall meetings, having the surveys. But I think there's something in that approach that left confusion for folks. I don't think they had enough opportunity to have that back and forth conversation. And I know it's hard to have that also in a respectful way, which is, but what has happened is, there's some things in the bylaw that, I was talking to Renee, we had a nice chat about some of the concerns people have with the bylaw, for instance, the wet inspection requirement, and people are saying, well, it's expensive. Why do I have to have that every year? I already have it with my insurance. And Renee is saying, well, it is only supposed to be the one time. You just have to demonstrate that you have it. But those areas for clarification, to make, I think that would help going forward to give people opportunity to ask the questions and get the answers, and for it to feel less one-sided and to feel less like you have a voice and you have a say. And that's why I'm so grateful to be here today, because it makes me feel like I have a little voice and a little say to help, to help us all work together on this. If we go to the next slide, this is basically just looking at the report of findings and some of the things that I noticed in the report of findings. Some of the pattern that I saw was that there would be reference to things like a lack of long-term rentals, or the cost of housing going up, and then it would say something like, with limited evidence, that it's related to short-term accommodations, but then it would say all the bad things that happen as a result, and it kind of paints an unfair picture for short-term rentals, to say that we're part of playing a very large role in those trends, when we don't actually know, because there's so many things that are playing a role in how the cost, the increased cost of housing and the long-term rentals and so on. So many different factors. And short-term rentals may play a role, I don't know, but I don't think any of us really know. We don't have the data yet to know the role it's playing. And if we do have that data, then it'd be good for it to be communicated more clearly so that we can all all benefit from having that clarity of information. And if we go to the next slide, in the report of findings, we also saw that most of the concerns about short-term rentals from other residents were things to do with really just bad behavior, things that should be, first of all, how we don't know yet, right? We don't have the data yet to know how many, what percentage of our short-term rentals are presenting this bad behavior. But let's say it's 2%, it might be. Then again, we're having some rules for 98% of people who are not doing this. But then when we look at that bad behavior, most of the owners don't want that behavior at their space. It's their property that they have invested in. They don't want firecrackers going off in dangerous ways. They don't want any one of the things in that long list of misbehaving. And when we look at what our current bylaws are supposed to cover, I would hope that those are things that we don't want anyone to do, whether they're a short-term rental neighbor or a permanent resident neighbor. We don't want that behavior around us or damaging our sense of safety in our properties. If you go to the next slide.
I'm just going to also mention time on this too.
That's right, and this is the second last one, besides a thank you slide.
Yeah, because we also want to get a couple questions in.
There we go, I'm happy to answer those questions. So basically I'm just saying that we want evidence-based decisions. It's not to say that we don't want to work together. When I say we, I'm talking about the sentiment that I'm getting from a lot of short-term rental owners. What we want to do is to recommend that the licensing be just licensing so that you can get an opportunity to gather information, to gather data, so that can then inform the way forward, and to perhaps use the services of some researchers who have that expertise so that they can design what does the licensing form and intake process look like, so that you're gathering information in a really clever way, so that you're paying attention to the diversity of property types, the different concerns that our residents have, and so on. Just to be really mindful about how we take on that licensing piece. And if we go to the next slide, thank you.
Thank you. Glad you spelled that out for me. I will now ask council if any questions, comments, or discussion items. There are none seen. I'd just like to thank you very much for coming and speaking with us today. And I think part of what you said was in regards to we don't know what we don't know yet.
Yes.
And that's part of the entire process is getting the information that we need. And without being able to get that information of where all the short-term accommodations are, we don't know what we have out there. So thank you very much for your time today.
Okay, thank you.
We'll now move on to 5.6. Darcy Chalmer, Residents for Balanced Community Growth, short-term accommodations related.
Good afternoon. It's not as daunting as it might think. It just had to make some edits, so. Good day. My name is Darcy Chalmer, and I'm here to represent a growing silent majority of Calabogie residents. Many residents have been away or unable to manage the online surveys, thus creating a void in their representation of viewpoints. We were asked to provide a name for our group in order to speak today, so as to capture the overall intent of those we are speaking for. We chose Calabogie Residents for Balanced Community Growth. We are happy to see Council's efforts to implement an STA bylaw. We are all aware of the many struggles and benefits many communities are facing with the boom in STA properties, thus appreciative of Council's efforts to ensure the township is positioned to appropriately grow in the years to come. However, nowhere does Council evoke its intentions and preoccupations as to the protection of our full-time residents who face problems associated with STAs. Where can the resident read about Council's outlook, which should be the basis for the creation of policies and resolutions or bylaws? We know STAs are a valuable part of our community and cohabitating is necessary, but Council must protect residents from undue nuisances and problems. On behalf of a large number of Calabogie residents, we wish to highlight 5 areas of concern with the second draft bylaw. It is our belief that should these deficiencies be addressed, the bylaw will ensure a more balanced and sustainable growth in Calabogie for STA owners and residents alike. It will also be a positive step to assuring the quality of life be maintained or restored to those residents currently being impacted. These deficiencies are as follows: zoning of property in the Greater Madawaska Township, enforcement of township bylaws, capping of STA numbers in the Greater Madawaska Township, classifying STA licenses to reflect the type and ownership of accommodations, and renters' access is only granted to areas solely owned by the STA owner. Before the bylaw may be effective, zoning is critical. Permits are the basis for allowing a use to be allowed. Permits are also based on the property owner respecting zoning requirements associated with STAs. Many municipalities have passed separate STA zoning requirements which aim to control the main concerns of residents. For example, larger vegetation buffers around properties to deal with noise. These restrictions are needed to naturally eliminate STAs, I almost said STDs.
That would be short-term destination.
Cures or prevents STDs, PSA for y'all.
Short-term destinations is what you meant.
Let's hope. Okay, so these restrictions are needed to naturally eliminate STAs on properties not meeting the set requirements. There is a possibility this zoning eliminates the need to cap STA numbers. Should Council decide that certain areas not have STAs, then those zones could also be added to the bylaw. Secondly, once zoning issues are properly addressed, the most important issue to resolve is enforcement of our community bylaws. The second draft bylaw offers 0 enforcement. I'm sorry. When situations cause a resident to file a complaint with Township, action needs to be taken right away. As infractions mostly occur in evening and weekends, we feel the OPP or emergency services deal with the issue at the outset. In order to assist them, they need current and clearly set bylaws. Once the OPP intervenes, there is a file number which may be attached to owner's address for further follow-up by bylaw officers. If the township's bylaws are up to date, if township bylaws are up to date, do they address the new issues created by STAs? This is my question. This second draft of the bylaw has eliminated the demerit system which held STA owners directly responsible. Why was this removed from the first draft? There is concern current penalties are also insignificant to act as any deterrent to bylaw infractions. Fines must be a deterrent so rules are obeyed. Currently, with the lack of any means to address infractions, the proposed bylaw leaves residents vulnerable to deal with any issues arising from STAs on their own. It is not enough that STA operators profess online reviews will ensure a positive STA impact in their community, nor is it appropriate that residents are left to make a complaint to an STA owner or the online rental platform, as it is exceedingly administratively complicated and does not ensure the problems are addressed. Residents need to have confidence that if they have a problem and report to Township bylaw, they know that it will be recorded, tracked, and addressed. It is assumed the administrative costs related to approval and certification compliance for a license are those covered by the proposed licensing fee. However, post-issuance of the license, if there is an issue, who takes care of the problem and how is that cost captured? Thirdly, capping of STA licenses should, as per our previous point, should zoning not be addressed, capping may be required. During the last council meeting, an example from Collingwood was utilized. Thus, we will carry this example through for our points. Collingwood's proposed STA bylaw for a community of approximately 30,000 people will cap STAs at 200 licenses. This is as per conversation with Amanda Phone, Licensing and Compliance Officer. They are currently at 400 units pre-licensing, which is less than 1%. In stark contrast, the Township of Greater Madawaska, with a population of 6,000, currently sits at 243 units, or 19%, with no proposed upwards limit. Why is there no limit? To reference another well-known tourist location, Mount Tremblant has their STA at approximately 10% and zone them to ensure they are not overly concentrated in residential areas. Conversely, this township's STAs, whether privately owned or a business, are allowed to operate anywhere. The second draft bylaw's allowable numbers of bedrooms is 6. This is in contradiction of provincial guidelines. The negative impact of no zoning or capping the concentration of STAs in residential areas is being experienced in the Peaks Village, where there is approximately 50% saturation of commercial and privately owned STAs. To date, 1 family has left, 2 families have stopped coming out to their property due to the issues they have experienced, and 1 family is awaiting the outcome of this bylaw process to determine if they will sell, all due to the transient and disruptive environment the saturation has created. This leads to our third point, which is to classify STA licenses. We believe not all STAs are the same. To ensure the peace and tranquility to residents, we propose a classification system similar to that being implemented by Collingwood. For example, Class A includes B&Bs. Class B, rental property is occupied by the owner and is their primary residence. They will be allowed to rent out a room or section of home, but owners will be on the property. Class C, homeowner, again principal residence, has an accessory dwelling, i.e. a bunkie, which they can rent out. Collingwood has nothing in their bylaw or future amended bylaw that will allow for any properties that are registered by a corporate number company. Thus, the licensing does not include commercial units. Also, any STAs owned by a numbered company should not be allowed in a residential area classified as commercial. At the very least, we recommend a freeze on any new STAs under numbered companies once this bylaw is in place. This will help to ensure a more balanced community composition. Finally, the proposed draft bylaw should specify that renters' access is only granted to areas solely owned by the STA owner. In accordance with the draft bylaw Site Plan 3.04 Paragulf, We would like to propose that the site plan submission guidelines includes a stipulation that the site plan shall only include property that is owned in totality by the owner and does not extend to a co-owned or shared areas or facilities. There is a potential liability issue in providing a license that could be interpreted as implying permission for renters to access any areas or facilities held jointly by the owner of the SDA and other property owners who did not choose to take on the liability associated with owning an STA. For the purposes of transparency and managing expectations, a clear depiction of the permitted use areas and non-permitted use areas should be clearly depicted or described in any advertising, as well as the internally posted rules and regulations. Currently, we do have residents of Calabogie who are experiencing difficulty in attaining home insurance due to the fact that some of their commonly owned property or co-owned property may be used by STA renters. And this is a concern for the well-being solely of that member, of those people. I wish to reiterate that my presence here today was spurred by the fact many residents have expressed concern with the current trajectory of STAs in their township. People who shared their concerns with us felt unable to convey their opinion, nor did they feel fully informed to make an appropriate decision. We, as the Residents for Balanced Community Growth, have worked very hard to gather input from residents, STA owner concerns, as well as how other communities who are dealing with the growth of STAs in order to present to you our proposed amendments. In summary, we commend Council's efforts in implementing an STA bylaw. However, it's incomplete. We feel it lacks a clear reason and objective, what it aims to achieve, and what the bylaw is fixing. Before deciding to implement this proposed second draft bylaw, we would ask Council to respond to the following points. With respect to bylaw enforcement, we recommend having a bylaw enforcement officer on staff to deal with both municipal and STA bylaws to ensure complaints will be dealt with consistently and in a timely manner. Secondly, because the demerit system has been removed from the draft bylaw, we feel the bylaw has been weakened. We believe that the demerit system, along with the stiffer penalties outlined in the first draft, is needed for appropriate bylaw enforcement. Thirdly, as part of the STA bylaw, we would ask Council to concurrently implement a zoning and classification system of STAs as needed, a capping system just as other municipalities have instituted. And lastly, STA bylaws must stipulate that renter access be limited to that property solely owned by the STA owner. We are respectfully asking Council to consider our points before adopting the second draft bylaw as it currently stands, and ask that Council defer the approval of the third draft based on the need for further consultation. In closing, we feel when the recommendations as outlined in our presentation are taken into consideration, it will strengthen the bylaw and provide a balanced approach for STAs and the residents of Greater Madawaska. Thank you for your time and the opportunity to present today. I or any of our members would be happy to answer any of your questions or offer further details if required.
Take a breath.
I was trying to hit 10 minutes, guys. That's why. I was like, it's more.
I gave you
we're right over
latitude, you
time.
got a bit more. Anyways, I will now open it up to council for questions, comments, discussion items. Councillor Levesque.
Thank you for that. That was well done and very inclusive. I guess the question I have, and it's really for our CAO, is what in that content has the new bylaw addressed?
The new bylaw, let me go through it. So what it's doing is we have bylaw enforcement. What we're trying to do is, in the last report to council, we highlighted the fact that we do have bylaws that are weak. So we're working towards strengthening these bylaws. So this is a separate exercise that will be complete on this side. So we do have where we're doing the third party for 24/7 hotline. The intent of that is for residents that call in and file a complaint, they have somebody to respond right away. Contact an owner, if not, take the next steps. So it's trying to add this second piece to being to bylaw enforcement. We speak about capping. You probably looked at the report. It doesn't really go into detail at this time. We are requesting from council to expand or implement or put it in full force in January of 2025. And what we're looking at is for council to allow us to begin the process of licensing, which would, allow us essentially to assess and be able to license and find those little pieces of how many are licensing and what we truly look like, because it is difficult without all that data to be able to put that into perspective. We talk about classification to a different extent. We talk about unhosted and hosted versus you went more into detail, which is something we could definitely explore throughout that, period. And then the renter's access, we've talked about it as in being we cannot require, put restrictions within some area not to this extent. So you've talked about not granting licenses if there is a common area. So that could be something that we could also explore.
That's not what we asked.
Oh, sorry.
No, we didn't say we don't want to give a license to anybody who has common property. It's the idea that the bylaw needs to stipulate that the renters only have access to the property that is solely owned by the STA owner. So in Barrett Chute, I own my property, and then I also have deeded access, or I have the ability to use 2 other areas that are also utilized and owned by 56 other residents. The point being is that the STA bylaw should say that the common areas are off limits based on the fact that that is owned by other people as well. So we're not saying don't issue the license, it's just that we would like a clarification that the renters only have access to the immediate property that is solely owned by the STA owner.
Okay, and so with that, it would just be, again, it would be another review of Township's ability to be able to enforce and to be able to put that into place, if that was an expectation or something that council would want to review. And then other than that, the zoning bylaw is currently under review, so there's opportunity to explore options if council wishes.
Thank you. Councillor Thompson.
Yes, thank you for that. This isn't related to this one, but I think if we are going to comment on, your thoughts, I'd like to also know about the previous speakers, if you've got anything that we'd reflect in the bylaws proposed. But we'll wait. I wanted to make sure I got that in before we moved completely on.
Renee, would you like to address that now, or would you like to wait?
Yeah, I actually had wrote notes to discuss them as we were heading within those parts of the report, because we are in the same with this one. So we're kind of hitting these points part of the presentation when we come to the report for the short-term accommodation bylaw.
Thank you. Any other questions, concerns, discussion items from council? No. Well, I thank you so much for being here today and your input. And as Renee said about the common areas, I think that would be something that would have to see whether we even have legal authority to say what can be done on common areas that are not owned by the township. So, or whether in fact that would have to go through your agreement with all your parties that have that common area. So that would be a gray area we'd need to look at to see whether we even have authority to discuss common areas. But I thank you so much for your time today. Thank you. We are going to be moving on to section 6, Protection Services Department, 6.1 bylaw. Prior to us getting to that, are there any members of the gallery that are wishing to leave? No. Okay. All right. I did not want any of our presenters to be disrupted. So let's move to 6.1 bylaw. 12-2024, clean yards, resolution, please.
The council adopt bylaw 12-2024, clean yards.
Thank you. Do we have a mover? Councillor Tripp, second. Councillor Thompson. Background, please.
So we do have Jim McBain here today. He's our bylaw enforcement with MLS.
But it was so educational, to be honest with you, because I'm facing this.
Jim, make sure your mic's on, sorry, please. Not that you need it, sir, but
No,
I'd be appreciative.
I've never really been to a full council meeting, but this has been very educational for me, and I happen to be dealing with this very issue in many of my municipalities, because we do 13 of them. So anyway, but that's not why I'm here. I'm here tonight to answer any questions that council might have with respect to the proposed clean yards bylaw. I understand that council has a couple of questions which I'm already aware of, and I'm just going to fire them out there right away, and then we'll open it up to questions of any kind, dealing with bylaw of any kind. How's that? So the reason I'm asking for a clean yards bylaw, prior to 2016, the only bylaws we had in our municipalities, the ones that I service, was the property standards bylaw. The property standards bylaw obtains its authority from the Building Code Act. The Building Code Act has sections 15.1 to 15.10, which outlines the process that must be followed when investigating and taking action with respect to property standards complaints. Within those sections, there is a requirement to provide the occupant or the homeowner or the person who's responsible for the violation an appeal period. The appeal period is a minimum of 14 days. So we were experiencing very much long delays in getting resolution to the problems. Now that doesn't pose a problem with every instance, but it does pose a problem with some. Conversely, the property standards bylaw was a bylaw I developed in 2016, and it's in place in most of the municipalities, other than the new ones we're just approaching. We actually started, I told Renee today, that we started this bylaw back in 2020, when I first redid your property standards bylaws. I forget the number, but it was a 2020 bylaw. We presented the clean yards at that time, but it never did get dealt with down the road. So here we are, 4 years later, and I'm very pleased to see it's here. The big difference is that bylaw gets its authority under the Municipal Act. The Municipal Act provides for the same sort of operational requirements, except there's no requirement for an appeal, which means we can deal with some issues very quickly. So I devised a bylaw whereby the officer, upon complaint, and first of all these complaints are reactive. We investigate reactive. We don't go around looking for grass that's 6 inches tall. We don't go around looking for violations. We act upon complaints. Once we get a complaint, we send an officer out, the officer views, and if the complaint is valid complaint, then if we become the complainant, there is no need for the public to get involved in court or their name being mentioned in any case. Complete anonymity, and it's confidential. Our officers are trained that way. They do never divulge the name or address of the complainant to the accused person. So we developed this bylaw whereby it's a two-stage process. The officer, upon receiving a complaint, will attend the complaint. He'll do an inspection. If there's a violation, he'll issue a notice on the spot. We designed what we call it the notice. And it's a clean yards notice under that very specific bylaw. It's a quick turnaround period. Most places have a 48-hour turnaround, or 72 is what I'm suggesting max. And I'm also, in this case, I'm suggesting a 48-hour. But most municipalities either have 48 or 72-hour turnaround. We expect the violator to rectify the problem, whether it be cutting grass, removing garbage from the property, relatively simple stuff, because out of our property standards complaint issues, about 70% are actually clean yards, which means they're relatively minor in nature. It's a single issue, either garbage on the property, derelict vehicles, long grass, overgrowth, weeds, that sort of thing. That's what the Clean Yards was designed to deal with. The more complex issues, which are multiple issues, if you look at the property standards bylaw, it deals with building structure, it deals with egress, it deals with plumbing, electrical, lighting, all that sort of stuff. Those are internal and it's more complex. So we use the property standards when we're dealing with multiple issues. It's more complex. The other one is an efficiency bylaw. We can deal with it immediately, quick turnaround. Picture this, you have a neighbor or somebody complains that someone has left a freezer by the side of the road. Freezer, the lid is not tied down, it's not secure, it's there. Some child could fall into it, could get trapped in it, this has happened. We can deal with that under the Clean Yards. Whereas if we did it under under the property standards, we have to do the 14-day appeal period and can't take action until that's over, unless it's an emergency order. So basically, that's the difference between the two. One is something that was designed to work along with, in conjunction with the property standards, not to replace it. Yes, there is some overlap, which is okay, because the ones that the overlap are the ones that we deal with on a regular basis and constitute the 90% of our property standards issues. So that's why we're asking for that. It's a valuable tool for the officers on the road. It actually saves time and money, because the notice and the follow-up order, if the notice is not adhered to within the 48 or 72 hours, then an order is issued. The order has the same strength and authority that the order issued under the property standards bylaw has, which means if they don't clean it up, we send in our team and we clean it up, whether it be cutting the grass, removing the garbage, and the bill gets put on their taxes. So the problem is solved. Our job, in my view, is to solve problems, not to charge people, not to go to court. We're not getting good results when we go to court. It takes forever to go, so we try to see what is our job. Our job is to resolve the issue, fix the problem, so that we don't want to penalize people or make life miserable or become the enemy. We want to work with people towards the common goal, and that is voluntary compliance first, number one. And if that doesn't happen, then we have no alternative but to take action on behalf of the municipality. So that's basically the comparison between the two, and I'd love to answer any questions you have.
Thank you. Any questions, comments, concerns, discussion items from council? Councillor Popke.
So, you say you respond to complaints,
Yes.
and what somebody sees as garbage being on the neighbor's property or whatnot, one man's trash is another man's treasure.
That's true.
So, I've seen it before where people will have derelict vehicles lying around in their yards, things like that. They can go and scrape up a part off of one of those old vehicles, and they can MacGyver something to make another one work. So to them, it's useful junk, but to somebody else, it's considered garbage. So how do you draw a line in between the two?
Yeah, to a degree that it's somewhat subjective, and you're quite right, and we face this every day. Picture this, we do 13 municipalities, we have property standards in 13 places. We're all over the place, we deal with that every day, multiple times a day. It's difficult, because you're completely right. Some places look like a junkyard, right next door you've got $1 million home. How do you deal with that? Well, that falls upon the bylaw enforcement officer. So that's why we attempt to get voluntary compliance. We try to reason with the people to start with. We point out the violation. If it's a clear violation, like for instance, property standards, a violation, you can't have 15, 20 derelict vehicles on your property if it can be seen by your neighbor or the street, okay? But the guy next door, he has a nice house, he doesn't want that, he makes a complaint. That's a valid complaint. We don't take action on the guy that's restoring his car in his garage or in his carport. You can't do it in your driveway, that's the law. But we work with the people, we try to make them realize, if there ends up being a violation, we have no choice. But we don't have that we don't have that problem. It is a concern, and we're pretty quick to realize it. We're always also pretty quick to realize whether there's an ongoing neighbor dispute, one to the other. And our staff are very quick to realize that. They usually bring it to either Darla's attention, our general manager, or mine, and we deal with that. And bylaws enforcement services will not be used as a pawn between neighbor disputes. That probably didn't answer your full question, but it is a reality, and it is something that we as the investigators have to take into account and do the best job we can and try to resolve the issue one way or another.
Thank you. Question, Councillor Thompson.
Yeah. It seems like this was made, I know you cover all kinds of rural areas, but it seems as though it was made for subdivisions or, houses close together with the little, Bar Haven size front lawns. And while I understand that long grass is an issue in those sorts of areas, in this township, we're trying to encourage people to have natural waterfronts, to let the grass grow, let the wildflowers grow. And the biggest complaint I think you're going to get is the person next door who's constantly cutting their grass every time you go to the cottage. So I can't see that we need a 6-inch high grass. I know you say it's discretionary, but if you don't like your neighbor, can they get a $10,000 fine for letting, at my house, I'd be getting them all the time. We've got acres, we've got a field in front, we just cut it 3 times a year, wait till the dandelions come up and then cut them down after they've pollinated, that sort of thing. So I really would like to find out from people around here if they think 6-inch or higher weeds belongs in that kind of a.
Let me answer your question, and it's a good one, and we face it all the time. The bylaw is a general bylaw that we do use in urban centers as well, but we also use it in we use it in Mississippi Mills. It's a combination of urban and rural. We use it in Whitewater, same thing, urban and rural. But it's also the same bylaw mostly as in Arnprior or Renfrew or other places. We don't measure, okay, and we take into account the local community. And when I say local, I mean your street. Okay, so we go up and down. If you're in a rural area, then the 6 inches doesn't apply. Let's be honest. And first of all, we would say that's ridiculous, number one. The stuff we deal with, usually it's 1 foot to 4 feet tall. That's when we get involved. We say, hey, that's too much. Okay, if it's in a residential area, if it's a farming community, doesn't apply. And I think there's an exemption in that bylaw for the farming community.
Yes, for farming, but we're all rural.
Yeah, we're all rural. Yeah, you are, to a great degree. And I believe you're talking about a naturalized garden. We don't enforce that. That's a naturalized garden, which you're describing, right?
Lawn.
Lawn, okay. But by definition, if you look at some of the bylaws, it's called a naturalized garden, which is kind of wildflowers growing up and a little bit of shavings here and there and that type of thing. So we don't get involved with that.
I'm not talking shavings, I'm talking about, you buy a house, the previous occupants mowed the whole thing from top to bottom, but you would like to have it grow up with some natural grasses and
well,
you're not making little gardens.
As council, you can change that length to whatever you will like. That is just a recommend. First of all, my job is to recommend best practices to council. What council does with the recommendation or the draft bylaw is up to council. You can change that 6 inches to 8 inches, 10 inches, 12 inches.
Which is what I thought we were doing here.
Well, you can do whatever you like with it. I will enforce whatever bylaw you pass.
Okay, so this is just a recommendation that we should have a bylaw?
No,
We're not supposed to discuss?
Well, I'm recommending the
confused.
property standards bylaw.
I'm confused.
The resolution was for this time that council adopt the bylaw.
As is?
As is.
Okay, so we're not just.
We can, or as amended.
Or as
we can
amended,
have
so we are
discussion.
discussing
That's-
right now how
yes.
we would want to
So,
change,
so
right?
I'm sorry, all he's trying to clarify is that you have an opportunity currently to adjust,
Currently,
just like.
okay.
Just like
I'm
any,
aware
so
of
this is what we have, that he's presenting, but if
Okay.
you want to adjust, he's open to adjust.
Sorry, I just thought he was saying that, I wasn't aware you meant right now, because that's what we're doing, right? Okay, sorry. Yes, I think the whole 6-inch high grass thing should be scrapped.
If I might, when I submit a draft bylaw, when it comes to areas where there's discretion that council should consider, I usually highlight it. So if you see something that says 6 inches, it's probably got a yellow highlight through it, which means, think about it, you want it 6, 8, 12, 18, or maybe no. The problem with not having any distinction there is You talked to, your worship, you talked earlier, or somebody mentioned bylaws that are ineffective and difficult to enforce. I deal with that every day. That's why I do what I do. I create new bylaws that are
Okay.
more specific, that are actually
Right.
enforceable.
So,
Okay.
so something enforceable, would that be that you shouldn't have long grass that obscures your view of the road from your driveway?
The defense counsel will ask you to define long grass.
Something that obscures your vision?
No, what's long grass? Is it 4 inches, 6 inches, 10 inches?
Oh, so now we've got to measure grass?
That's right.
Okay,
That's what I'm saying. That's what you deal with in the court system,
well, then it
right?
should be scrapped, because nobody wants, anyhow, I'm suggesting it should be scrapped. So you're asking for input? Yep. Okay, may I move on to another?
And believe me, it doesn't matter to me.
I know, it just, yeah.
Do you have a supplemental?
I do, I have a few. Weeds, the subject of weeds.
Yeah, weeds are overgrowth.
Okay, so you've mentioned 3 weeds types that are edible, that are medicinal, and 2 of them in here are covered under the Ontario's Noxious Weeds Act provincially. Why name weeds? Because you then have to make it enforceable. What is a weed, especially in a rural area? Are we trying to suggest we should get homeowners to poison their waterfront so there are no dandelions growing there? So I'm not being
We don't worry about
confrontational.
Dandelions, I
It's in
believe, are
there.
excluded.
It's in there.
Number 1.
It's in there.
Okay, well, then you
So-
can exclude it.
So, what is a weed? So I think all we need in there, and I'm talking to my fellow councillors, I think all we need in there is nothing that is noxious no noxious weeds under the Ontario Act. I know we're
We still-
allowed as a municipality to add to that, but I don't think we need
Okay,
to.
as far as weeds go, I have no problem with that. With the fact you're gonna identify a weed as being one of the noxious weeds as identified by the provincial government. That's all right, but the other issue is overgrowth. Okay, it's just everything is growing up too high. Okay, like, we have some areas within this community that are somewhat urban, that have issues with the height of their growth, their plant growth. And the neighbors complain. So either we do something about it
Yeah.
under a bylaw, or we don't.
So how
And it's-
tall of
it's
a
also in
weed
the
is too
property
tall?
standard.
We'll have to figure that out, right?
Let's not try and talk over each other.
No,
Yeah.
I think that what it boils down to, if I might, is the bylaw is there for council review. Council has it, and I'm glad it's council making this decision. Council's decision collectively to come up with what their final bylaw will be, and your bylaw enforcement agency will enforce whatever that bylaw is.
I understand that. So then the next one is vermin.
Vermin.
I suggest that we can just say, don't leave food out, compost, or anything that would attract vermin, rather than say you have to get rid of vermin, because chipmunks are vermin if they get in the house. We live in the country. Do I have to rid my yard of mice? I can't even rid my house half the time.
Let me tell you what our complaints are.
So-
Our complaints would be something like this. Someone's renting a house, and for whatever reason, there are squirrels running all over their property. Sometimes it's a neighbor putting bird seed out, and the bird seed's attracting vermin, squirrels, rats, porcupines, whatever. That happens all the time. We also get infestations of insects, in which case we're dealing with roaches, we're dealing with any sort of insect that will get into a house that's run down, that's not kept, that has garbage exposed. So the big cleanup has to start. And we also investigate cases where the house is totally infested with bed bugs or whatever. It's a rental house. What do we do? So what we do is we issue an order under property standards requiring them to get pest control in there, solve the problem, and there's a time factor. And if they don't do it, we will do it. So you can pick and choose whatever description of the insect, vermin, or rodent you would like. Nonetheless, the problem is not going to go away. It's still there.
I have a feeling council needs more time to talk about this and possibilities than we have time for today. Because I have a whole list of things that I'd like to change, and we need to discuss it, possibly open it up to the public.
Thank you. Councillor Tripp.
Thank you for this. I'm just reflecting on the conversation we've had, and I noticed in the existing draft bylaw, there's two words. One is under General Standards Part 4A. The word unsightly is used, and again, at the top of it, excessive accumulation. So those are very discretionary terms.
They are,
that could
sir.
maybe take the pressure off of a definitive number. But I don't know how that works in discretion on your side of the desk in terms of, excessive gives you the room you need to do your job with, but it doesn't tie us into a 6 or 7 inch level of grass. It's excessive when you're on the field. Is it your determination to calm the complainant in terms of what is excessive and where's the line? But does that help, or is that just muddy it?
No, let me explain how that came about. That came about from we could be more specific with, like, for instance, accumulation of garbage or debris, right? So garbage is pretty simple. Sometimes it's in a garbage bag. So what is the number? Usually we're dealing with someone's has 25 to 30 garbage bags in a trailer that's been there for a week. There are rats and crows all over the place. The place is spread.
Excessive.
That's an accumulation. I'm not going to have my officers count the garbage bags. Okay, I mean, when you get there and you get to the scene, you can determine fairly objectively whether it's an unsightly situation and there's an accumulation that's in violation of the intent of the bylaw, without getting into the specifics. But maybe that's something we can do with the height of the grass.
Excessive.
If it's excessive, okay, so again, we're gonna have that problem in court, but that's up to the courts to decide. It came that way, it's been accepted by very many municipalities. It doesn't matter to me personally, but the point is a good point by a councillor, and we can change that wording, because we do use that in other places where it's not convenient, and we don't go around measuring anyway, but nonetheless, we do wait for the eyebrows.
So thank you for that. At the end of the day, then, this is a bylaw that provides support to the property standards bylaw to give you the tools that you need to do it's more efficient and more effective for you on some of the not minor, but some of the issues that you need to act quickly on. And I think your comment about the fridge is important for us to realize that there are things that are very timely in this, and we wouldn't want to wait a 14-day appeal period. Yeah. But we do need that flexibility, because Councillor Thompson's correct, and we don't want to box you in or box in the community to these are the standards. There needs to be that flexibility with the use of words like excessive, or I forget what the last one was, unsightly.
Yeah, if I might just speak to the unsightly, what you have before you is version 2 of the Clean Yards bylaw. Unsightly and accumulation of garbage was not in the original that I developed in 2016. And the reason why it wasn't is because many of the complaints that's very general from the complainant, messy property, it's unsightly. So we go down, the officer goes down, they'll make an assessment on whether it is unsightly by definition or whatever, and then they'll bring it back, or they'll issue the notice to correct it, and then someone will go down and do a secondary before we take any action anyway, just to make sure that we're not being, the proper call, in our estimation, has been made. We've never had a problem with this, ever. That's a 2016 bylaw that's probably in effect, I'm guessing 6 or 7 municipalities. Everyone has welcomed it, has freed us up with respect to time and effort, and how to conduct business on a daily basis, and the penalty is a little less than what you get under, I don't think, Darla, have we ever laid a charge on that? We have, okay.
Yeah, when they don't clean up and it's a notice, and they still haven't done anything, we try to work with the residents, and we try, like, they're older, maybe they need a son to come up, and we work with them. And if they don't, and they just don't want to do it because they feel it's their home or their land and they should be able to do what they want, then they're giving, the Clean Yards has a component of a notice and an order. So then an order is giving them another 2 or 3 days to do it. If we see any compliance, we go and we thank them and we say, we see a notice, and we continue. If we don't, and it's $200 plus, I think it's tax. So they get a charge of $240, and it's written on a part 1 that goes into the court system.
Okay, thank you. Any other, Councillor Popke?
In that document, it was saying that basically dilapidated buildings, things that are falling apart that need maintained, could fall under that Clean Yard Act. But however, there's a lot of people around here that might not have the money per se to upkeep certain aspects of their property. So if they respond to a complaint or you guys respond to a complaint or whatnot, and it is unkempt, and you issue them a fine, they're not gonna be able to pay the fine. And so where do you go with that?
That type of a situation would not be dealt with traditionally under clean yards. That's going right to property standards, where we issue an order, we give them the right to appeal, so they can appeal by order. We have a situation where a house is falling down, roof's caving in, veranda's weak. If somebody went onto that property, there would be a public safety issue. Is that what you're describing?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. And it's vacant. The owner's remote or dead, or it's just not around, and the building is not up to standard. So we go in, we do an inspection, we say, oh yeah, this building is dilapidated. In that case, what we do is go to the CBO. He's the only one that can declare a building is unsafe. And based on his recommendation, I would ask Chris, will you check that building for me? And if you find it to be unsafe, just let me know, and then we'll take the follow-up action. That building's gonna be demolished, if it's a public safety issue.
But what if there's somebody living in there?
Well, if there's somebody living in it, then it's gonna have to be fixed up, one way or the other. And if it doesn't, and the responsibility ultimately is with the property owner, and we would consult with our supervisor and say, look, this is what we got going. We've got 2 or 3 on the go right now in different places. And say, look, we got a situation up on John Street that the property's falling down, somebody's living in it. How far do you want us to go with this? We gotta get, people are complaining, it's a public eyesore, it's a safety factor, the person's old. We're getting into the social issues that we deal with every day. We look for the county to deal with those issues, but the bottom line is, if it's contrary to a bylaw, we will get direction to take whatever action we're directed to take. And we have demolished buildings. They've all been vacant so far. Luckily, we've never had anybody living in one. We have worked with people who are suffering from dementia and are recluse and hoarders and living in homes, and we've worked with them to place them. That's something we do as part of our function. They fall within the cracks. Somebody mentioned it earlier, the fellow who spoke first about those issues, mental health and all that. We deal with that every day. And there's nothing around in the county that will specifically do it. We used to have a committee in Arnprior that worked with other municipalities that lasted about a year, that they lost interest with it. So all these issues are social issues, a lot of them, and we have to deal with it. I'm sorry.
Yeah, thank you.
We're going.
Any other questions from council at this time? No, and Councillor Thompson?
Are we going to vote on this today or
Yes.
defer it?
Well, we have a motion on the table that we have to
Okay, we
deal
have the
with.
motion on the table?
Yeah.
Then I have a lot more questions. Not questions. I think if we change it so that, as Rob suggested, it's unsightly, excessive grass length. But I still think that section C already covers grass or improved surfaces adjacent to a private property within the road allowance between the private property and the road curb line or road edge of pavement referred to as the inner or outer boulevard shall be maintained in a state of good repair as set out in this bylaw, tenant blah, blah, blah. Clean, safe, clear and safe condition. I think that already covers the only areas that we really need to be clean and, not full of weeds growing all outside of the house. And I think we should get rid of the weeds and only mention that that you shouldn't have anything that is not in compliance. What is it? Nothing that is contrary to the Ontario Toxic Weeds Act or whatever. I can't find my bookmark.
Noxious, I believe it is.
Noxious weeds. And that's mainly an agricultural thing, but it should apply. You can't have giant hogweed. And that is a different process. That's not under bylaw anyhow, but we could put it in as a note because there's a weed control center you call. So I think that, I suggest that that should go. As well as the infestations, insects, so are wasps something that you can call bylaw over, like they're pollinators, I think that all we really need is a note that you shouldn't leave out, as the Ontario Act, it shouldn't leave out food for wild animals, your compost, anything that will attract vermin. And that way we can cover vermin without defining, just keep it clean so that they're not attracted, without saying you have to poison the animals that eagle is going to eat. So I don't know. Those are my thoughts.
Mayor?
Oh, Councillor Tripp.
Thank you. Given the dialogue that's going on this bylaw, is there an option to, we can amend quickly 6 inches to excessive, but all of the other elements that we're talking about, which are getting into the micro details, could we pass a bylaw and have underneath the bylaw a policy statement that we could move this to give the tools needed to start at the spring to have this in your toolbox, but that over the next month or two, we fine tune a policy statement that would sit underneath the bylaw and help give you the definitions or the wiggle room. So if we use excessive, the policy statement could unpack some of these things that you're raising. When we then have the time to have the narrative discussion around it, so we could get on with the process for this evening, get this passed, if that's the will of council, and allow us to then come back to it. And it is a bylaw that can be amended. It can be fine-tuned as the needs of the community changes. But I think it's important in the spring to get you the tools you need now to do the job.
Well, yeah, the timing is perfect actually for the bylaw. May I comment, make a response? Okay, you shouldn't put a policy statement in a bylaw. A bylaw is a bylaw. A bylaw is law. So you can't put a policy statement, correct me if I'm wrong, CAO? But you can put your definitions. There's a definition section in that bylaw. So whatever definitions you want to clarify or clear up, you can put them in the definition section, which is in the preamble of the bylaw, or probably section 2 of the bylaw.
Can it be a regulation under the bylaw?
Pardon me?
Can we have it sitting as a regulation to the bylaw?
What you're doing is when you're putting in a definition in a bylaw, that is the bylaw, that is the definition for that bylaw. Okay, so you could have another bylaw with the same word, and the definition could be different. That definition is specific to that bylaw at that time.
I'm just looking for a vehicle that we can move this, defer to the.
As with any bylaw, bylaws can be reviewed. Bylaws can be augmented and changed if the circumstances dictate that it's required. So there is a mechanism to, once a bylaw is in effect, if the circumstances dictate it, it's the will of council to change those things, then yes, there's a mechanism for doing that.
One of the things, Your Worship, one of the things we might want to do is, if the bylaw is passed, is the public has to be made aware of the new bylaw, do some public education and awareness, and try it for a year. If the feedback is positive or negative, we get to respond to it.
Yeah, that works for anything that's passed.
Exactly.
It's analyzed and see if any changes are required. So that's part of the process that we go through anyways. Is there any other questions, concerns? Councillor Levesque?
I'll keep it brief, but I guess I sat back and watched and listened, and thank you. Good to see you. But I think with the number of concerns that Councillor
Thompson?
has brought up. You know, like, I don't think we can push it through without double checking or editing. Like, we're not gonna edit on the fly. We've already done that for the last 25 minutes. So I think we're kind of done editing on the fly. So I would suggest that we postpone this and then we look at it but we make sure that we do it expediently so that we can put the tool in Mr. McBain's hands before, that's just, I mean, there's enough discussion already with, we could put it in place today, as you said, but then there's already things in place that you've identified that you don't agree with. Now, you're one vote. So that's the other thing. No. So.
And just to say that in.
Hey, I need you to, you'd have to identify yourself and.
I'm Darla McBain. Any clean yards that we have done in every township, except the new ones, has made a difference in every town. And people don't complain about the little stuff. They complain about the big stuff to make their property look clean and presentable, and it also reflects on your town. We have never had a complaint in anything that we did in the clean yards. In fact, people have thanked us for doing what we're doing with the clean yards, because it helps people that are moving in, it helps older people, it helps have the municipality looking nice.
Okay, thank you. So we have a resolution on the table. And I believe that resolution was that council adopt the bylaw 12-024 clean yards.
Your options are to carry, defer, or defeat it.
Well, you have the three.
You would defer it and I would amend, and then bring back.
Well, number one, if we did vote to defer, knowing the timeline and constraints for any implementation, but also knowing the timeline and workload of staff, if it were to be deferred, would we be able to get it back by next month's meeting, or would it have to be further along the line than that?
I'd recommend that councillors that have changes that they're recommending, they put it directly in the bylaw where recommended changes. It will move us forward faster in understanding, and I'll present those changes to council for approval at the next meeting.
So for defer for today? Okay, I'll have to, who motioned and who seconded?
Councillor Tripp moved it and Councillor Thompson seconded.
Okay, so we would need, if we do a friendly change of that resolution for it to be deferred, I would need first Councillor Tripp's agreement on that as he moved it. I would then need Councillor Thompson's agreement, and shaking a head doesn't work. I need a vocalization. Thank you.
Yes.
Okay, so the resolution will read then.
And you shouldn't need a resolution, we're just deferring.
Just deferring?
So all in favor.
Okay, all in favor for this to be deferred? That is carried, so carried till next meeting.
Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you both for being here. We are 2.5 hours into this. Does anybody need a bio break? Nope. Oh, what's that? You want to do an extension before?
Would you like to call a recess or?
Let's call a recess
There's,
for 10 minutes, because we'll also have to do an extension
Sorry,
afterwards.
there's a motion on the list of motions that Renee has, or sorry,
Okay.
that CAO has.
That the council meeting of April 18th, 2024 move into recess until
I would say, let's do it 10 minutes, so 5:43.
4:43 p.m.
43. All in favor?
Can I get a mover and
Oh,
a second,
sorry,
please?
mover. I thought we did that. Councillor Thompson, Councillor Tripp, all in favor? It is recessed till 5:43 p.m. Let us know when we're off camera. Can we have everybody take their seats, please? Thank you. Thank you, Robin. You can put us back in. Thank you. Thank you. It is now 5:43 PM. Resolution, take us back in, or do we? No, we don't need a resolution, take us back in, so we're all clear. We are now moving on to section 7.1, Public Works Department. Steve, may I ask you? Is it, or there's a resolution 77-24.
That council award quote from Bonisher Excavating in the amount of $172,177.92, including net HST for crushing of 20,000 ton of granular M gravel.
Thank you. Do we have a mover? Councillor Levesque, second by Councillor Thompson. Steve, background, please.
Thank you. So a little bit of background is when the dam project started, the township was approached to see if the contractor for the project could use the township land adjacent to the dam project to pile excess rock. And in return, the township could have all the material and crushed into the gravel when complete. Now that they're complete, this is why I'm bringing this report today. This being a new venture for staff, we thought it'd be best to put out a tender for crushing for 6,000 ton. But staff received 2 tenders and the price per ton was higher than expected. After the tenders came in, the prices seemed higher than I anticipated. So after some discussion with the contractors that submitted, it's because of the trucking of the equipment. Like it's a big operation to bring in, like the trucker crusher and stackers and loaders and machinery. That's why the price was so high. So the more granular we crush, the less money we pay per ton. So it's a better investment, but it was kind of new to me to do this. So I'm learning as I was going. But you can see in the report that the price dropped drastically to $821 per ton. So that's why I'm bringing this report today. Is there any questions?
Any questions, comments, concerns? Councillor Thompson.
I'm just a little bit confused. We get obviously, the more you get done at once, the better, but you've divided the budget into different years, or am I mixing something up?
Yeah, so the other, after talking with the contractors, they actually do it for other companies and contractors where they crush, is they'll actually crush like the 20,000 ton they are for us, but only charges for 10,000 ton this year. And then as soon as the new year starts, they right, because this gravel will last us a few years. So that way we can budget properly to pay for the rest next year.
That's great, thanks.
Thank you. Any other questions, comments, concerns, discussion items from councillor? No. All in favor? That is so carried. Thank you. Thank you, Steve. Yeah. Prior to going on to our next section, we will need to have a resolution for an extension of council's time past 6 p.m. Resolution, please.
Be it resolved that the Township of Greater Madawaska Council proceeds beyond the hour of 6 p.m. at the April 18th, 2024 regular council meeting as per section 13.12 of bylaw 24, 2023 being a procedural bylaw.
Do we have a mover? Councillor Thompson, second by Councillor Levesque. All in favor to proceed longer than 6 p.m. That is so carried. Thank you. And I believe at prior to 7 p.m., we would need to do another extension. So if you could just advise me when we're getting close to that in case I forget. Thank you. We will now move on to section 8.1, Planning Department, Building Permit Report Information Item. Ask Chris for an information, please.
Yes, thank you. So this memo was just to inform council of the building permit revenues and amount of permits issued to date for 2024, and with a comparison that shows the same from 2023 for the first quarter. As you can see, the revenues from the permits are up quite substantially from the previous year. This is due to the permit fees were increased late of 2023, I believe it was. And the development charges too, as of January this year, have been increased due to indexing, and that's the reason for the development charges being higher. Even though to date it is less permits issued than at this time last year. So if council has any questions on my report.
Thank you. Any questions, comments, concerns from council? Just seeing that nobody else has any. I see that in 2023 and in 2024, we have estimated values, as opposed to real values. Is that from when people come in originally what they're expecting or to build, or just to clarify that for me would be great?
So what the estimated value is when somebody applies for a building permit, they have an estimated project value, what they think it's going to cost them of the project. Now, I'm not sure, that gets submitted to MPAC. I'm not sure really what they do with that, if they use it as part of their assessment when they do their property, or if it gets used in the interim before the real assessment is on the property. I'm not too sure, but that's where that number comes from. It has nothing, whatever you think your project's going to cost you when you apply for permit.
Thank you. I just wanted to clarify that was the person themselves or the contractor doing the estimation. It was not us doing an estimation on it. Okay, thank you. That clears that up for me. Any other questions, concerns, discussion items? No, well, thank you. No need to vote on it. It's an information item, so thank you very much, Chris. Move on to 8.1, Special Events Permits 2024, Calabogie Motorsports. Resolution, please.
The council approves the issuance of a 3-year operating permit for Calabogie Motorsports Park for the period of July 29th, 2024 through July 28th, 2027, as required under section 5.01H of bylaw 14/2016. And furthermore, that council approves the following special events to be held at Calabogie Motorsports in 2024. Calabogie Spring Classic, Friday, June 21st to Sunday, June 23rd, 2024. Vintage Road Race Association, Friday, June 28th to Sunday, June 30th, 2024. Canadian Sport Compact Series, Sunday, August 11th, 2024. It's a one-day event. And Calabogie Summer Classic, Friday, August 16th to Sunday, August 18th, 2024.
Thank you. Do we have a mover? Councillor Tripp, second. Councillor Popke. Do we have, who's doing background on this one? Is it Kristen?
Sure.
Well, thank you.
Yeah. So this is a report that comes to council annually. The Calabogie Motorsports track is permitted up to 4 special events per calendar year, which is approved by council. So essentially, special events are permitted to produce up to 65 decibels, whereas regular events at CMP are required to maintain a sound level decibel of 45 decibels. And then additionally, their operating permit is set to expire this year. So they are looking to have their operating permit reissued for another 3 years, which would commence on July 29th of this year and expire July 28th of 2027. And if there's any questions?
Thank you. Any questions, comments, concern, discussion items from council? None on the scene. All in favor? That is unanimous, so carried. Thank you. We will now move on to section 8.3, new road names, Granite Village. Resolution, please.
That council approves Monterey Drive, Black Spruce Court, and Longleaf Way as road names for the proposed Granite Village subdivision, having county file number 47-T-22004 and 47-T-22005, and furthermore, that council hereby gives notice that a bylaw to repeal bylaw 48-2021, known as the road naming bylaw, will be placed on the next regular scheduled council meeting of May 16th, 2024. The purpose of the amendment is to add Monterey Drive, Black Spruce Court, and Longleaf Way as road names in the township.
Thank you. Are there any questions, comments, concern? Oh, sorry, you need a mover first. I'm trying to push the time along. Councillor Popke, second by Councillor Tripp. Any background on this other than what you stated? The road names that they've submitted. Okay, I think we've got that. No, and I'm quite happy with that. All in favor? That is unanimous, so carried. Thank you. We now need to move on to 8.1 bylaw 20-2024 license of occupation. Madawaska. Did I miss one? Oh, sorry. Okay, so 8.4, my apologies. Bylaw 21-2024 zoning bylaw amended 2306.6 Granite Village. Resolution, please.
That council approves bylaw 21-2024 being a bylaw to amend zoning bylaw number 22-2003 as amended to rezone the lands located in part lot 22 concession 12 in the geographic township of Bagat from rural and environmental protection to rural residential exception 20. Rural residential exception 21, rural residential exception 22, community facility, and environmental protection.
Thank you. Do we have a mover? Councillor Levesque, second by Councillor Thompson. Background, please. And we have, on camera. Just identify yourself there, please, and then.
Thank you, Mayor Weir. It's Kent Randall from EcoView Consulting. So this bylaw concerns, as Ms. Mass pointed out, a rezoning for the plan of subdivision known as Granite Village. You just dealt with the street names. The proponent is moving through clearing their conditions of draft plan approval, which were granted in September of last year. The subdivision is actually two separate subdivisions on either side of Norton Road, just west of Calabogie Village. So this bylaw is to rezone the lands within those subdivisions to three different rural residential exception zones, as well as a community facility zone that would apply to the stormwater management blocks, and also EP, just to accurately reflect the natural heritage features on the site. The RR exception zones are required, so they're site specific, so they would allow whatever's allowed in the RR, which is single detached dwelling, but they're site specific to recognize deficient frontage. So there's some lots that don't meet the frontage requirement. They're mostly located on the cul-de-sacs and some of the bends in the road. It's just the nature of the shape of the lots. They're all of sufficient size. The other aspect to the R exception is to limit the size of the dwelling units, and so that's in line with the hydrogeological assessment that was provided with the subdivision applications that recommends that those dwelling unit sizes be limited just based on private servicing that's available. And also there's a reference in one of the exceptions to fencing within stormwater easements. So there's a stormwater easement adjacent to a few lots that's required for stormwater management purposes, and so the township will have access to that easement. It's not part of a stormwater block that would be owned by the township. So in order to control those easements and ensure that nothing's constructed over top of them, there's in one of the rural residential exceptions, it's to prevent the fencing from being constructed within those easements, which was a requirement of the draft plan conditions. So that is the bylaw that's before you to today or tonight, and I am happy to answer any questions. I should also point out that Jessica Ray Reed from EcoView Planner from EcoView is also here to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you for that. Any questions, comments, concerns, discussion items from council? There are none seen. All in favor? That is carried. Thank you. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Now we'll move on to 8.5 bylaw 20-2024, license of occupation, Madawaska Street Docks. Resolution, please.
The council approved the CAO to enter into a license of occupation agreement with the dock owners on Madawaska Street to allow for the temporary installation of private docks on township property in 2024.
Thank you. Do we have a mover? Councillor Levesque, second by Councillor Thompson. Background, please.
So the intent of this report is to provide a recommendation to council regarding the docks on Madawaska Street. And so the process, as you can see in the background, started in the spring of 2022, and it had led up to a public meeting where concerns were identified. And then the recommendation at the time was to put into place a committee to review options for the docks. In November of 2023, a representative of the Madawaska Street Docks Committee presented their final recommendation, which is included in the background. So this report essentially is to, it does align with the Madawaska Street Docks recommendation, which essentially was to allow the docks be essentially on a temporary use. So this is what it's doing. The bylaw is a license of occupation agreement. This type of bylaw is already used in a few other areas of the township for private dock usage on township property. So the bylaw, I believe, was passed, I think it's in the background here. A similar bylaw was passed in October 2022 to allow residents or dock owners to sign the license agreement to be allowed to put their docks on the property. At the time, only one of the dock owners signed the agreement. At this time, I'm recommending to proceed with the same license of occupation agreement. This allows us to enter into an agreement with the dock owner with some expectations and insurance and safeguard the township. And this would be for the season of 2024, and it would allow the township to develop next steps and options for Madawaska Street improvements.
Thank you. Any questions, comments, discussion items from council? Councillor Thompson.
I think it's great. This has progressed nicely until we can get, an overall plan going. I do have a couple of questions. I recall there was somebody that doesn't have waterfront property across, or doesn't own property across from the waterfront that had put in a dock. Will this person be being able to go into an agreement?
The intent of this is to allow current dock owners to be able to enter into a license agreement. So I think at this point, the recommendation is just to proceed with what we have now, and then for the season.
Thank you. Any other questions, comments, concerns, discussion items from council? I'm seeing none. All in favor? That is carried. Thank you. We will now move on to section 8.6, Village and Waterfront Development Plan. Resolution, please.
The council direct the CAO to review options for developing a village and waterfront development plan to be presented for council consideration as part of the 2025 budget.
Thank you. Do we have a mover? Councillor Popke, second by Councillor Tripp. Background, please.
So as you can see, I've highlighted a few reports over the years that have really identified the potential within developing the village of the Calabogie and the waterfront areas within the community. This would help support local residents, businesses, and the tourism industry. So there's, as in the report, we highlight a bit of a few items that are coming up over the next few years that really require planning for. So we have replacement. So we have the replacement of, or reconstruction of Madawaska Street, Mill Street, Francis Street. The county has confirmed that Lanark Road is also slated for reconstruction. This really highlights the need for us to have a plan in place when we are discussing these pieces of lack of parking and pedestrian and sidewalks and safety and active transportation. So developing a plan will allow us to have something in place to coordinate these types of works and really have a plan for the overall community to be able to see, I guess, a future development and planned accessibility across the town, or Calabogie village. So the intent today is to receive direction to proceed with developing a process for planning, so then we could budget for it in 2025 to move this forward. The anticipation would be a similar process to the strategic plan, whereas there's a lot of community engagement and milestones within 2025.
Thank you. Any questions, comments, discussion items from council? Councillor Thompson.
This is great. I think it's wonderful. I'm wondering if whatever findings or whatever is developed for the waterfront in Calabogie will be applicable, or in the Griffith area. We've got boat launches and public property that I don't know if we own it. There are people with docks across from the road. Will any of that be considered in this, or will that be something separate?
I think it could be a combination of both. As we're reviewing options for process in 2025, we could have an exercise that is reviewing this along with the other portions of the township.
Thank you. Any other questions, comments, concerns, discussion items from council? There's none. I'd just like to say that this is a starting point of allowing staff to look into the feasibility of any development and whether it's plausible in any areas, or how we would go forward with it. So this is giving permission for staff and direction to staff to look into it for us and develop a plan, and whether that ties into later down the road a community improvement plan, that would be wonderful as well. So I like the start and the initiative of this, so thank you. All in favor? That is carried. We now move on to 8.7 bylaw 19-2024 short-term accommodations licensing bylaw resolution, please.
The council adopt bylaw 19-2024 license, regulate, and govern short-term rental accommodation.
Thank you. Do we have a mover? Councillor Popke, second. Councillor Thompson. Background, please.
So we're heading into another, a step for short-term accommodation and review. At the last council meeting, we were directed to come back with a draft bylaw, circulate the draft bylaw and come back with any changes that may be recommended to move another draft forward. So at the time, we discussed or recommended that we proceed with a survey. The intent of the survey essentially was to circulate the bylaw. However, we adjusted the survey a bit to provide for respondents of real feedback. So we're trying to kind of prompt questions that would allow for residents to consider how, with council approving to license, how can this bylaw be used throughout the township? So we did receive 151 respondents, and they provided feedback. There are I do want to highlight there were some submissions that were not included within that 151. There are 25 that were duplicate submissions, as our SurveyMonkey provides securities to protect the integrity of the survey. They would have all came from the same submitter, so we have removed the duplicates throughout the survey. And so the survey identified, if you were a short-term accommodation, neighbor, owner, or general resident, or other. Other included businesses, users, owners or maintainers of, or future owners, and some that are service these short-term accommodations. And then, as you can see from the results, I would say compared to our initial survey, is this one there's a lot of response rate within the residents and neighbors, where the last survey would have had more of a split between owners. So the report highlights some of the topics or key topics we would have read through within the survey. I'm not going to go through all of them because it's quite a bit. But the intent of this table is to provide you with some of the key topics or concerns, the comments, and then some township responses or staff responses to these comments. What I will highlight, though, is some of the comments that we received today. I know we talked about when we just had the delegation. I spoke a bit regarding with some of your comments, Darcy. However, with the Kendra, we didn't really highlight those pieces. So I'll go through those. It's licensing fee, which is actually the third one here. So licensing fee was highlighted throughout the report. The biggest concern I've seen is that the licensing fee is too low. There was concerns over the fact that it wouldn't be cost recovery and that we would be expending more than what we're receiving with the fees. And the other side is that I was hearing that there's concerns about that the fee should be higher to generate revenue. So there's some comments about generating revenue to be able to fund some of the infrastructure that these users may be using. So our response is more around the fact that we are looking for cost recovery. We're not looking to generate revenue, and we recognize that the fee may be lower, and you can see lower in the report that we talk about the variety of prices or fees throughout other municipalities. In our case, at this point, we're looking more at it's a combination of a registration or licensing system that would allow us to register owners and be able to have contact information. And I want to stay with that at this point is more about building that data. So I'll highlight that too. It's about the data is important to us. So it's important for us to be able to measure and we require evidence. I like evidence-based decisions is very important. Without that evidence, without a licensing process, we're not able to do that. And then we did have a few comments regarding the fee. If I applied, I was a short-term accommodation owner, and I wasn't approved, I would still pay the full fee. So we have added an adjustment there to allow for a refund that just says processing of application. Other than that, I think I've covered most of the items. So the changes that staff is recommending at this point to the bylaw is related to the clarification. We added the access, the road access. It's important to us. If a home's on a seasonal home, that the renters are very aware that the services to that seasonal road they may not be as accessible. Additionally, we adjusted the licensing date to be valid for 365 days instead of being expiring every December 31st. We have removed that only one license per premise shall be permitted. The intent is that there may be premise defined in the bylaw refers to land, and there may be another premise within the land. So we would allow for 2 licenses if there was 2. The insurance, we're requesting that the insurance certificate identify the short-term accommodation being operated as, or the premise being operated as a short-term accommodation. And then we also have added a section that shows the requirements between initial application and renewal of license requirements, because they were the same. This will streamline the process. The fee, so we can see the licensing fee with similar municipalities range from $250 to some $3,000. There is a variety of fees out there. We recognize that. The recommendation for the application fee at $300 is intended to fulfill the need of the township at this point. So at a cost recovery, on a cost recovery basis. Let's see. Yeah, so, and then the recommendation is to proceed with a third-party platform. This really helps us identify properties, monitor the compliance and monitoring. So we have the 24/7 hotline for complaints, which will allow residents to receive feedback, and the hotline provider would respond and contact that responsible person that's registered within the property. It's a database that will allow us to be able to assess all the uses of the properties, the posts, Airbnb, we talked a bit about that earlier, as a classification. So this allows it to classify and allows us to pivot with our bylaw as required as we move forward. And then again, we did a little bit of an application process. We attached a guide, and then the intent is to require licensing by January 1st, 2025, and we will continue to build this page on our website that informs the short-term resident owner and provides some information that they can make available within the property to inform their guests on bylaws that are applicable to the township and that they're required to abide by. And that's all I have, if anybody has any questions.
Thank you. Any questions, comments, concern, discussion items from council? Councillor Thompson.
Yeah, thank you. I think this was obviously not an easy thing to put together, but there was considerable feedback. I do have a question about the STA caps. It says in the list that we're not looking at it at this point. Is that something we can consider later, or?
In any point when we're talking about that, everything can be considered later. And that's the thing, is that we're looking for flexibility to be able to assess. We have a licensing implementation date, or full implementation date, by January 2025. This allows us to start licensing, processing, and really assess and report back to council if we see some concerns. So there's flexibility. If certain areas need to be strengthened, we could consider that. We talked about at one point here, certain areas, maybe having a cap within areas where there's issues, there's residential. These are all options where we see concerns, but without having the data to assess it, it's difficult to make those decisions. So in the intent here, the bylaw, the intent is to start the process. And one of the comments within our survey was that other municipalities are strengthening and you're going the other way. And the thing is that those municipalities started somewhere. So they started somewhere, they put a bylaw in, they assessed, and they started moving and pivoting within what they needed for their community, and we need to do the same.
Thank you. Any other questions?
Did you vote? No, okay.
Councillor Thompson?
I'm wondering about we're doing it on a cost recovery basis, which is great. Is there a difference between the costs for a new license or a renewal? So is there more cost, or should it be the same? Or is there a difference in the cost for doing someone who just rents 2 weeks of the year versus someone who rents all the time?
At this point, seeing how low our cost is, and it's simply for possible inspections and the possibility, it's not intended to be a full enforcement at this point. I would recommend that the fee for all stay at 300. However, be reviewed as we implement and proceed.
Thank you. Councillor Tripp?
Thank you. I have two comments and then two pieces of feedback that I received from a constituent. And the first was, again, the chapeau of this. I think the document's really well done. A lot of work has gone into this. Unprecedented community engagement, which is ongoing, which I think is helpful. And we realize this is really the starting point to get us through the year and have that as an assessment process so that at the end of the year we can revisit and retool. But it's clearly a document, it's living. In fact, we heard during the break from one of the individuals who was attending, communities such as Tremblant took 10 years to land on their final document. They had to get something out of the gate and work with it, and I think that's the stage we're at now. The one comment I received, which is really administrative and clerical, is in the definitions, we define the short-term accommodation, really well defined. The suggestion from the individual is to copy that, paste it to the top of the document in a revision. I mean, we wouldn't do it now, but under the whereas. So as you're starting to read the bylaw, the first thing we read is, what are we talking about? What's our definition of short-term? And then as you read through the document, everything flows through. And then the second was a comment that I received a few days ago, which I thought was really apropos because it sums up the relationship that's starting to develop. We saw it here tonight on both sides of this story. They've reviewed they live in a very high density area. They are not an owner, but they live adjacent to a short-term rental accommodation. Reviewed the short-term rental doc and have had several opportunities to provide feedback. I applaud the town council and the community for this. However, I feel the document falls short on a number of issues. It doesn't seem to enforce accountability, which triggered this document to begin with, which was something we've discussed tonight. There should be a mandatory closed fire pit requirement, as they've witnessed many renters who have not managed their fires properly and appropriately. And there's been very little study done on the strain to the water table. A rental with a max of 12 people draws significantly more water on our through our groundwater source and natural water feeds. In summary, though, the overall document, although it's weak, it's at least something. We're starting. We're really hoping that council would be interested in protecting the residents while also carving out time for short rental owners, but to respect the needs of those who live here, as opposed to the large owners that don't reside here. I'm paraphrasing this, but Stan said he looks for a balance within the community. And I think it's encouraging that I received this a few days ago and then tonight to listen to the dialogue. I think we're working towards that balance. I think this is a good start, but to be clear, it is a start. It's law once we make it a bylaw, but it's not a bylaw that will sit static on a shelf. This is something I think over the coming months, as we go through this journey with all sides together and getting a better understanding, we'll end up with a tool that will work. And it captures all of these things. I had another individual call saying, I rent my room out 3 or 4 times a year, and I don't make much more than $300 on it, but it helps her with a low income. So this dialogue and the journey we're going on, I think, is in the right direction, and I'm encouraged that we've landed on the excellent work that's come from our staff today and through the comments that we had from the community, both good and bad. But I'm encouraged with what I've seen, and I just wanted to raise those 2 points that I received. One is kind of administrative, as I said, but I think important in terms of clarity of the document, that it starts right away with what we're talking about. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions, comments, discussion items from council? None seen, so I'd just like to once again thank staff for this, and there's been a terminology used, and it's been going through this, and say sides. I don't see it as sides. I see us as one common goal for the betterment of everybody, whether you be the short-term accommodation owner, the short-term accommodation next door neighbor, or anything. We have one common goal, and it's to make sure our visitors are safe, make sure that we have the appropriate steps and measures in place to make sure that we have the appropriate responses and then have an understanding of what short-term accommodations do we have in the area. And then once we establish all of those, and safety is paramount, and then we can move forward. And as Councillor Tripp said, that Tremblant has been a 10-year process and it's still going for them. So I think this is a great step in the right direction. I am very disheartened that we did have somebody attempt to sway a survey that is supposed to be for the betterment of the public. And that, I find that extremely distasteful, but at the same time, I compliment staff for having the forethought that that might happen and having the system in place to see that. So I, once again, thank staff for that. And this is what I see as a fabulous step forward for our entire community. Thank you. Not unless you had a delegation, sorry. Oh, I'd have to turn to our clerk for that.
It would be up to council to.
Council would, yeah, have to vote.
Okay, take the mic. Just identify yourself first and then turn the mic on, please.
My name is Sue LeBrun. I'm a resident and I'm a member of this group that was presented by Darcy. It's just, everything is coming together great. I really like the chemistry and I like the fact that people can talk together. And I'm just wondering, when you consider passing this bylaw, could you include something to the effect that maybe you might want to think of parties coming together to assist council as we go along and review all of this with these parties together with staff or whatever, like a committee or a group that's a think tank? Because we don't want to be antagonistic, they don't want to be, we want to help. But I think there's such good feedback that you could use our knowledge and our experiences to help and assist staff. That's my suggestion.
Okay, thank you, and we will definitely take that into consideration. As we've mentioned, this is a process, this is a journey, this is a living document, and staff will be analyzing and helping us as council and informing us as council of best practices. And as you can see with the amount of public input that has already taken place, I can't speak for staff, but I know that they value everybody's input. And I know the discussions that you've mentioned that you've had with Renee personally, that you know that she's quite open to discussions and very personable. So I don't think that that is a concern. I think that's going to be part of the process. Thank you. Sure, if you want to make a quick one.
I just wanted to say that I agree 100% with the need for a committee. We had that idea when the docs came up in the agenda today, and how that was a very contentious, an issue that really meant a lot to people. And that's what council decided, let it be something that the people discuss, come together, work together, and bring something forward. And I think that would address some of the concerns that I know some of the owners have around feeling like they don't know if they're scared of what's going to just come at them, rather than feeling like they're part of the process.
Thank you. Any other questions, concerns, discussion items from council? Does anybody need the resolution reread before voting? There are none seen. All in favor? That is unanimous, so carried. Thank you. And I'd like to thank everybody that came out for this too and your input. So thank you all. Prior to us going on to the Finance and Administration Department, do any of our gallery wish to leave so that we don't have disruption while our treasurer is presenting?
The moment they've all been waiting for.
I didn't say staff leave. Yes, staff can leave. They don't have to present anymore, do they?
See you.
Kendra, there's a paper underneath your chair there. I don't know whether it's. Oh, it's ours. It's ours? Don't worry about it then.
Just wanted you to pick it up for us.
That's how we work as a team.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you all.
Thank you.
All right, moving on to section 9, Finance and Administration Department, 9.1, bylaw 17-024, being a bylaw to establish a procurement policy.
That council approved bylaw 17-2024 being a bylaw to establish a procurement policy, and that council hereby repeal bylaw 14-2019.
Thank you. Do we have a mover? Councillor Tripp, second. Councillor Thompson. Background, please.
So good evening. So tonight we bring forward a new procurement policy for council's approval. A procurement policy is a document that outlines the rules and roles surrounding procurement and contracting for a municipality. Although the township presently has a procurement policy, a substantive review has not been made to the township's purchasing policy since 2019. Changes in business practice and level of procurement, as well as trade treaty legislation, have resulted in a need to develop and adapt an updated bylaw. The policy was completely revamped, however, no major changes were made with the exception of the purchasing threshold, which will help achieve a better balance and promote efficiency within the township. Does anybody have any questions regarding the attached policy?
Thank you. Any questions, concerns, discussion items from council? Councillor Thompson.
I'm just curious how, like, a higher threshold makes sense in that it's less staff time, council time, if it's just $5,000 or whatever. How much has this increased by? Is it like with the rate of inflation or?
Yeah, so we had thresholds like under 5,000, 5 to 10,000, 10 to 25,000, 25 to 50,000, and 50,000 and more. What we looked at collectively together was when we brought forward the budget, we brought forward our operating and capital budgets, and within so what we're purchasing has already been approved through the budgeting process. We were trying to eliminate like a delay. So basically just regular operating items. How can we bring them forward through the system a little bit faster, and then also have like a fair and equitable process on doing that as well. So I guess going back to your question, how much did they increase? The previous procurement policy had some conflicting sentences in it, which kind of, it was interpreted different ways by different people. So, if you read the table in the previous, it allowed a manager to purchase up to 50, and then anything greater than that, actually, up to greater than 25 could be approved by CAO, which didn't really make sense. And then anything, it would say that in the chart, but then going into the actual meat and bones of the procurement policy, it actually said that the council had to award a project. So it was just conflicting. So we basically summarized it. I don't think we changed it too significantly. We did a lot of investigating and comparing against other municipalities of comparator sizes, and 50 for up to 25. So in order for department heads to efficiently be able to do their role, being able to approve operational expenses up to $10,000 was really appropriate. And then just having that dual authority between 10 and 25,000 just allowed a little bit more security measures and to ensure that the procurement policy was being implemented in a fair and equitable manner as well. And then 25 to 50 so that the treasurer and the CAO was more involved. And what we said with that is that we would bring back a report to council for any purchases between 25 and 50, so that you're all aware of what's being awarded behind the scenes, just so that we're not bringing these to a regular council meeting and taking up your time when we know that they're already operating and capital expenses that we could, if providing that we follow the procurement policy, allows a fair process.
Sounds good, thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions, comments, concerns, discussion items from council? No, the only question I have, does this have any bearing on if a declaration of emergency takes place? Have any of the procurement structure within that, has that changed at all?
Yeah, so under an emergency, there's a specific section in the procurement policy that allows us to proceed with an emergency, obviously. I'd have to look up, I don't believe.
Sorry, that I didn't throw
Sorry,
this at
that's
you earlier, but I just thought of it now.
No, that's okay.
We haven't adjusted the emergency section of it, so it still removes or allows the township to move forward in emergency situations.
Okay, thank you. That's just all I want to clarify. Any other questions, comments, concerns, discussion from council? No. And all in favor? That is carried. Thank you. We now move on to 9.2 bylaw 18-2024 asset retirement obligation policy. Resolution, please.
That council approve bylaw 18-2024, being a bylaw to adopt the attached asset retirement obligation policy to remain compliant with the Public Sector Accounting Board new reporting standard PS 3280.
Thank you. Do we have a mover? Councillor Levesque, second by Councillor Thompson. Background, please.
Okay, so the Public Sector Accounting Board implemented a new financial reporting standard, PS 3280, mandating that all local governments integrate an asset retirement obligation policy into their financial statements. This requires quantifying and disclosing on financial statements certain legal obligations associated with the retirement of tangible capital assets. For example, if there's a building with asbestos or lead, it's basically how we would remove these items and basically ensuring that we report these liabilities because it will be a future cost. As a result, municipalities must prepare an ARO policy, an asset retirement policy, that establishes guidelines to ensure compliance with the new standard, which is what is brought forward to you today.
Thank you. Any questions, comments, concerns, discussion items from council? All in favor? That's so carried. We now move on to section 10, committees and boards. 10.1, Canada Day Committee, Councillor Tripp for information.
Thank you very much. There's not an awful lot to share. The committee is meeting, they're doing well. We're at that phase during these 3 weeks where it's all of an awful lot of balls in the air that are falling into place along with the project plan. Nothing of concern, everything is coming together. Another push out for volunteers. We're always going to be looking. We have the posts up, and for those students who are in school, it can count against their hours. There'll be more to follow at the next council meeting when we have more tangible activities that are booked and that are in line. And again, we're working closely with wards 1, 2, and 3, and we had, as I mentioned in my last report, them in attendance, and there's a lot of communication, which is very helpful to support those in our other areas. Thank you.
Thank you. Now move on to section 10.2, Recreation and Culture Committee. Councillor Levesque for information.
Thank you. Last meeting was last week on April 10th. Lots of work done to date with regard to inventory, community survey, and more analysis to be done, including outreach to other wards. At last week's meeting, some of the highlights, we've got a cleanup day coming on April 20th, so people are invited to participate along with the committee members that can participate with it. And as well, we started up a youth soccer skills that's going to be starting in May, and we've set that advertisement out on the website. So we're starting to move forward with some tangible programs and more to come. And hats off to the committee for getting things going and really being enthusiastic about it. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions? None. Thank you very much for that update. 10.3, OPP Detachment Board. Councillor Tripp for information.
Thank you very much, Mayor. So we're making some headway. We've had an informal meeting with the 7 elected representatives who are had been applied and moved towards the board. As part of the first meeting was similar to our meeting as councillors before we were actually signed in. This was a chance just to very informally through Zoom get to meet each other. Not all were there for scheduling conflicts. We've gone through training. One of the requirements to sit on the board, which is interesting, the Department of the Solicitor General has a 5-module training program on governance, on responsibilities, the role of a board. And it's a fairly rigorous 2.5-hour training program with exams throughout, and you have a pass-fail. So in order to move forward to be appointed to the board, you have to have your courses passed and a security clearance. So we're just waiting for confirmation on all 7 of us to receive that status and submit it into our clerk. We're looking for the first meeting on May 3rd, so next Friday, at which point we will review the 13 applicants that we've received as the community members. We'll name, and I'll come back to council with the names of the 7 municipal representatives. I'm reluctant to do that now until I know that they've actually passed the courses and received their security clearances. Of the 13 applicants, 2 have been automatically discarded because they are ex-OPP officers, or in one case, a justice of the peace. So we have 11. It's a good group to draw from. The committee has a grid that we're doing an assessment on, so we'll each come in with our own views. We'll have a discussion and land on 2 of those. Those 2 names will come back to each of the 7 councils for approval. And at that point, the bios, everything else, I'll bring back as well to the council. The provincial nominees we're not expecting until the fall, and they come from the province, so there'll be no council engagement in that part. My plan going forward on the 3rd is, if there's an agenda, I'll send it out for information purposes once I receive it. But this first meeting is really just to identify the 7, and then we start talking about the work plan and more information to follow. Happy for questions.
Thank you. Any questions? Councillor Thompson.
I find that all very exciting. Well, yeah, it's really good. I'm just wondering how, if it ties in, this is policing, if it ties in with the, the 4 risk priorities and how that works.
So on the advisory committee, if you go into the deep dive of that report and look at the committee, you'll see that the detachment commander is part of it, we're part of it. It's very heavily involved in it, and it's a big part of what we do. I don't have much more details than that. It's very similar to when we were first elected and then appointed in our first council meeting, where the veil comes off and you understand what the real work is all about. There has been a committee that has been meeting for some time, and that committee has been disbanded as a result of the change in legislation. So there are work plans and activities ongoing. We just have not been apprised of them yet, other than be told some are going to be exciting and others are going to be challenging.
Thank you. Any other questions? No, none seen. Thank you for that information. We'll now move on to Section 11, bylaws, 11.1, bylaw approval resolution, please.
Be it resolved that the following bylaws, 17-2024 procurement policy, 18-2024 asset retirement obligation policy, 19-2024 short-term accommodations licensing bylaw, 20-2024 license of occupation Madawaska Street docks, 21-2024 zoning bylaw amendment 2306.6 Granite Village be deemed read a second and final time and passed by council. And furthermore, that 22-2024 confirmatory be deemed read a first, second, and final time and passed by council at the regular council meeting held April 18th, 2024.
Do we have a mover? Councillor Levesque, second, Councillor Thompson. All in favor? So carried. Thank you. Now moving on to Section 12. 12.1, motion to adjourn. Resolution, please.
That the regular council meeting of April 18th, 2024 be adjourned at 6:42 p.m.
Do we have a mover? Councillor Thompson, second, Councillor Levesque. All in favor? So carried. Thank you very much. Please be aware